Hi, and welcome to this week's Three Legs, Four Wheels F1 podcast. It's Paul here with
Dan, Chris, Lee,
and
Statman.
Yes. Hey. Welcome back, Sean. Thanks for joining us. Because after that race yesterday, I think we need your help.
Well, I'll do the best I can, gentlemen, but I can't give any guarantees or anything.
We'll manage.
Just need
Yeah, that's what I've done for most of my career. So,
See, we're learning from the best.
well, in his absence, I'll be here.
So, what did you think to the Azerbaijan Grand Prix yesterday, then?
I thought that it made great television, both in the opening laps and in the closing laps. And it was basically those phases of the race sandwiched what was a purist's race, because for an hour in that race, it was a tactical battle based upon when you pit. And my strategy was, and if anybody who follows me on Twitter would have seen me sort of live tweeting the strategy as we were going along, my strategy was that stay out on the tyre for as long as you can, whatever it is you're on. In the case of the front runners, it was the super soft. Mm-hmm. Stay out there as long as you can, keep track position, guard against any potential safety car. And if a safety car comes out, then dash in, take the ultra softs, because they all had a new set of ultra soft left, and go to the flag. Now, when Vettel pitted, I tweeted, I wouldn't have done this, because now if there's a safety car, Bottas can pit and win this race. Now, of course, those circumstances played out, but the final restart actually turned into something different, where Vettel essentially had the chance to win it and messed it up. And then Bottas, when it looked like it was in the bag, was unlucky to run over some debris that hadn't been cleared. It was a real shame, but it was certainly exciting. You know, there's a lot to be said for not knowing who's going to win the race until the last minute. And Lewis Hamilton, of course, lest we forget, the race winner.
Yeah.
Only led 3 laps, which is actually, of all the wins he had, which I think is, 63 now, something like that? Of all the wins he's had,
you're the guy to tell us.
The fewest, he's the fewest number of laps that he's ever led in a race victory. He's never, the previous lowest number of laps he'd ever led in a race was 6 when he's won it. And that was, if you cast your mind back to Shanghai 2011, when he passed Vettel on fading tyres in the closing laps to win it in the McLaren. But yeah, Hamilton's never been the recipient of such a fortuitous race win. He's certainly lost a few.
Maybe that's why.
So I guess what goes around comes around.
Yeah, I was going to say maybe that's why his celebrations were so muted, because he didn't want to celebrate too much, knowing that he knew that he inherited that win, and whilst you got to take every win you can get, it's probably you're quite mindful of the fact I wasn't on my top form today.
Which he hasn't been all season, really.
No.
But even an off-form Lewis can still lead the Drivers' Championship after 4 races.
It is surprising almost that Hamilton is leading the championship, bearing in mind how much Sebastian Vettel has pretty much dominated this season so far. I don't think we expected Mercedes to be so erratic. It's just not quite at the races, and we have to pad this. I mean, the fact that we're saying is that what's wrong with Mercedes? They missed pole by 0.18 in Baku, which is the second longest track on the calendar. 0.18. I mean, is that a crisis? Probably not. It's just that Ferrari, Vettel in particular, is getting the job done, particularly with regards to Q3. Vettel, the first Ferrari driver to take 3 straight poles since 2007. Never done it. Vettel himself had never done it in the turbo hybrid era. And, Ferrari are getting it right, and Mercedes are almost getting it right. It's not that Mercedes are in crisis. They're there or thereabouts. And of course, Bottas would have won this race. But it is, Baku was only the second time in the last 6 Grand Prix that Hamilton had out-qualified Bottas. So, either Bottas has raised his game, or Hamilton has slipped a bit. It could be that Bottas has actually has improved over the off-season. Lest we forget again that no one ever gave Nico Rosberg credit when he would beat Hamilton. It was always, why isn't Hamilton doing the business? It was never, wow, Nico Rosberg might just be a really, really good driver. And it could also be that Valtteri Bottas has raised his game accordingly as well. Let's not rule that out. We shouldn't be we shouldn't fall into the lazy trap of thinking, well, obviously Lewis is finished as a driver. You know, where's his head? Blah, 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 blah. It could just be, well, hang on a minute. I think Bottas is putting manners on him here, and he needs to. He's probably gotten used to the situation where he was the number one driver last season, and all was well after several seasons where Rosberg was right on his case. And maybe this is it's a good wake up call for him, because he went. Classy move by Lewis that he went to the Mercedes driver room afterwards to commiserate with Bottas before going to the podium.
Absolutely.
And he knows he was going to be beaten in that race, but for a turn of good fortune. I mean, and not just beaten into second. I mean, he wouldn't have been second either. He was probably going to be third in that race had the safety car not come out.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, it was incredibly bad luck for Valtteri with that tyre going. But it would have been interesting to see what he would have been able to do to keep ahead of everybody behind him had he not had that puncture. And I think he had the pace to do that, and I think he certainly has the car under him. And I think he was getting the tyres working well, which that's a complaint that Lewis has had this season, that the tyres aren't coming together for him, and there was a lot of that coming from him during the race.
There was a lot of that coming from a lot of people. Saying that they couldn't get the heat into the tyres.
It seems to be a pretty un-Ferrari thing to do, but they seem to have built a car which seems quite driver-friendly all around, don't they?
Yeah. Well, I want to interject with something that wasn't really discussed over this weekend, but I thought was very important. And that was, Baku has been in June the last couple of years. Now, in June, the average temperature in Baku is something like 25 degrees Celsius. When you move it to April, the April conditions in Baku are more like 15 degrees Celsius, more like Western Europe at this time of year. Now that makes a critical difference to the track temperature. Now Pirelli brought Ultra Softs, thinking obviously, well, it's going to be cooler, there should be less degradation. We'll bring the Ultra Softs, and it turned out even that wasn't enough, because people are complaining about we can't get these tires switched on and whatnot. I do think that not enough was made of the fact that the track conditions were very odd for a Formula One race, in that we had unusually cool temperatures for a Grand Prix. We don't usually have a dry race take place in such cool conditions.
Yeah,
but
track temp was like 24 degrees or something, wasn't it, at one point during the race?
Yeah, it was pretty low, and it was low on Friday as well. When I analysed the long runs from Friday, I found that it was par for the course, in so much as Mercedes couldn't quite get the best out of the ultra soft tyre compared to Ferrari. Now, especially compared to Red Bull. Red Bull were phenomenal on Friday. Red Bull were the winners of the Friday Grand Prix. But the signs were there, and I pointed this out in my notes to the broadcasters before we went to air on Saturday. Don't be fooled by this. And the reason I said that was because the difference between trap speeds between the speed trap itself and the finish line, which are obviously on the same straight, but several hundred meters apart. And what I discovered was that the Red Bull was really, really moving because it had much higher top speed. I think Ricciardo had something like another 26 kilometers an hour in the bag between the speed trap and the finish line.
That's a
lot. Whereas Hamilton only had 9 kilometers an hour. Now, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to work out, well, how was that achieved? Well, obviously, either Red Bull are running very low wing, which is conceivable, or they're running much higher engine settings. Now, when I did a dive into it, I found that Red Bull were also bossing the middle sector, which is a little bit more twisty. But I had to take into consideration the fact that this is a team that hadn't been in the top 10 in the speed traps all year, and suddenly they're super quick down the straights and just, they feel like they're accelerating all the way to turn one, whereas Mercedes and whatnot are reaching terminal velocity a lot quicker. So on that, I concluded to the broadcasters, I don't think Red Bull are going to be part of this pole battle today. And so it transpired. So I guess I get to keep my job for another week. But at the same time, but returning to the tyres, Mercedes actually weren't that bad on the ultra soft. It was that Red Bull were very good. Mercedes were pretty good, and Ferrari were pretty good. We didn't know going into the race how the Mercedes was going to handle the super soft, because the only long run of all the two Ferraris and the two Mercedes, the only long run on the super soft on Friday was conducted by Vettel. So we didn't know where exactly Mercedes were going to fall in terms of the ultimate pace on the super soft. But we did know, contrary to what you heard, that the ultra soft was actually okay for the Mercedes. Once you get past the incessant moaning of racing drivers, and God knows racing drivers can find a way to moan about these things, what we actually ended up with was a car that handled the ultra soft pretty well, certainly well enough to win the Grand Prix, as it transpired.
That does come as a shock. I'm going to have to start looking at data a lot more closely over the course of a weekend.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one thing I don't want to sound like a grouchy old man or anything, but sometimes there is a herd mentality about this stuff, whereby people latch onto this notion and look for everything that backs up their preconceived notion. What I do when I'm analysing tyre data is only look at the lap times. I don't want to hear, oh, our car's terrible at doing this, terrible doing that. Well, if I look at the lap time and it says, well, you did 5 straight laps on this long run that were all quicker than Vettel's laps, you know, and the tyre the tyre was hanging on, you were within 1 second of it 14 laps later, you know, this data is at odds with what everybody is saying. This data says you're going to win the race. So it's important to look at it with a dispassionate point of view. Now, as I said, you know, engine settings and fuel weights can come into it. But sometimes when you just look at it for what it is, you see a different picture. And we, as I said, we didn't know how Ferrari was going to handle, or how Mercedes was going to handle the super soft. And certainly Vettel seemed to have it in the bag. But I also knew that when Bottas would eventually pit, once Vettel had pitted, when Bottas would pit and take the ultra soft, if it had been clean and green, he would certainly pass Hamilton, and he might even catch Vettel. Of course, we'll never know if that was actually going to happen.
Definitely. Right, shall we take a look at things team by team for how everyone did?
I guess there's only one place to start, really, when you're looking at teams at the back and who didn't finish.
Yeah, and it's the team with the double DNF, which is Red Bull.
Where do you lay the blame for that one, Sean? As a fan, or as a viewer of motorsports, where do you see more Max, more Danny?
Racing incidents?
Yeah.
Personally, my gut instincts at the time it happened, watching it live, was, oh, Max has caused an accident there because he's moved in the braking zone. And everybody knows if you start moving around in the braking zone, you're causing a problem for yourself, because where's the guy behind you going to go? Once he's committed, okay, I'm going for this point, you know, I'm going for this line. Where's he supposed to go once the brakes are on? For those, if people didn't see the excellent analysis by Anthony Davidson after that on Sky or ESPN, depending on where you're watching, it really summed it up brilliantly well, I thought. Where once Verstappen had made that move, you know, Ricciardo had no front aero, took all the air off him, couldn't change direction, so he's suddenly locking the fronts and running straight into the back of Verstappen. My personal belief is that was an accident waiting to happen for more than an hour, because it seemed that Verstappen was getting super aggressive. He made that early move on Ricciardo at turn 2, which was great. Of course, it required the cooperation of Ricciardo to make it great. And in this instance, Ricciardo was about to make probably a great move on Verstappen, but Verstappen did not cooperate, and it ended with both cars out of the race. And that's just not a good way to fly. If Ricciardo had received that level of cooperation from Verstappen, both cars would have made it round the corner. And it is funny that they'd gone 38 races in the points consecutively. Even with all their bad reliability last season, they had 38 consecutive points finishes until Bahrain. Bahrain, first double DNF since Korea 2010. Remember that one when Webber crashed and got hit by Rosberg in the wet? And then Vettel's engine failed. Hadn't happened again until Bahrain. Now it's happened twice in 3 races, which is as if the management were not already annoyed. Now these two pillocks are running into each other, trying to do like a glorified version of the Force India boys. And, you know, I could understand why they'd all be seething. And I see that both drivers have been called to Milton Keynes to apologise in front of everybody, which smacks a little bit of like a morning assembly at a primary school where somebody's done something really bad and has to speak to the whole class and explain why everybody's in detention because of us, which I actually think is the best thing they could do, because they could piss and moan as they want, but when you're actually confronted with the entire factory floor and think, we were here. Yeah, it's like we were here 12 hours a day building these bloody cars so you could crash them into each other like a couple of morons. I think it'll be a very chastening experience for both of them. Even though I personally find Verstappen to be more responsible for that than Ricciardo, both of them will obviously keep that in mind the next time they start getting tasty with each other, because there was a wheel-to-wheel contact earlier in the race as well. So, that accident could have manifested before. And of course, Verstappen was in an incident in China as well. He's getting a little bit excitable. It's not, the thing is, we all know that pace is there. And I've said many times before on this show, I see him as the second coming of Gilles Villeneuve in terms of the excitement that he can produce, the excitement he gives us as fans. He makes it a very, very exciting formula where he's just like, I'll just stick it up the inside and hope for the best. And Ricciardo was the same, of course, because that's what he was doing there. And it would be a shame. I hope they allow them to race on, because all credit to Red Bull, much as all credit to Mercedes in times past. They let the drivers race, and we tune in to see a race. We don't tune in to see recriminations. We don't tune in to see tyre changes. We don't even tune in, God forbid, we don't tune in to hear statistics. We tune in because we want to see the guys race, and Red Bull let them do that, and I hope that carries on.
That's true enough.
Do you think, though, that if it was the other way round, Red Bull would have told Daniel Ricciardo to get out of the way? Because I can't help thinking that they've left...
No.
Do you think they're looking after so. Max?
No, I don't think so. I think, to me, one of the most underrated, probably the single most underrated element about Daniel Ricciardo is his mental fortitude. I think a lot of people look at this smiley Aussie and think, he's so chill, he's so laid back. But to take a word out of the Murray Walker vocabulary, he's made of granite underneath. And if think back to 2014, when Webber retired, Ricciardo was called up from Toro Rosso to be teammates to the 4-time world champion. The guy who's just won the last 4 titles, swept everything off the boards, records are plenty, and this minion from Toro Rosso has been promoted. Ricciardo shows up and promptly smashes him to the point where Vettel leaves the team completely. Now that is the ultimate example of what Ricciardo is capable of doing mentally. And to me, I don't see a situation where Ricciardo would stand for that if he felt there was favoritism. And I personally haven't got the sense that there's been favoritism at all. Certainly in this incident, it's just like, look, can you two pair of pillocks go and speak to everybody, say you're sorry, and not do it again? Yeah,
I mean, I can't help thinking that Red Bull might already know, especially with these talks today about Honda and Red Bull talk about engines for next year. That if he was going to go, that might make his mind up. Because he wants to compete now, doesn't he? Not in another 2 years' time. So I can't help think that maybe.
I think it's inevitable that any driver wants. I think it's inevitable that any driver wants to be competitive now, because you don't know how long your career is going to last, do you? And
no.
He's got to look at the Ferrari taking pole position and thinking, if I was in that car, that's Sebastian Vettel. That's the guy I smashed in 2014. I'll smash him again if I was in that car.
Do you think Vettel would have him there?
No, I don't think Vettel would have him there. But I also, it depends a lot on whether Vettel is involved in the decision-making process. I'm sure Vettel would not want him there, because after the way Ricciardo took him to the shed in 2014 against expectations, I'm sure Vettel would not want to fight for the championship with Ricciardo, because I'm firm in the belief that Ricciardo, if it comes down to a psychological mano-a-mano, Ricciardo will win that fight.
Yeah.
Because we've seen Vettel throw his toys out the pram when things get tense. Ricardo doesn't do that. Ricardo keeps it between the lines. So, yeah, Ricardo's not to be messed with if it gets down to a situation where he's in with a shout of a championship, especially against a teammate. I don't see him taking any prisoners.
That's why I'd love to see him go to Mercedes. I'd love to see him and Hamilton in the same team.
I would. I think it'd be amazing.
I think you'd either see like what you'd really see what Ricardo's made of, and I think for Hamilton to get on top of Ricardo, you'd probably have to see a new Hamilton as well.
I think that's possible. It'd be two really, really alpha male characters clashing at Mercedes. But we also know that Hamilton is more than capable of dispatching the very best that can be laid before him, because his teammate in the first season was Fernando Alonso, who was also the reigning world champion, much as Ricardo found at Red Bull with Vettel. And Hamilton, I mean, it was closer, obviously, because I think Alonso and Hamilton were actually tied on points. Hamilton beat Alonso on countback, effectively. But the fact that he did that as a rookie said everything I need to know, because Alonso is probably the shrewdest political instigator, shall we say, agitator, in all of Formula One. Alonso has a leaf out of the Alain Prost book when it comes to political manipulation. It's just a shame that he seems to manipulate himself into uncompetitive situations. But there we go, that's another story.
But they're never his fault. It was always somebody else.
Yeah, or a gate. There was a gate somewhere.
Yeah.
Should we move on for another team? We've got Red Bull. We started going off on a bit of a tangent there.
Yeah. Moving on, we've got Haas next on the list. Grosjean. The excuses have started coming out now. Apparently,
Ericsson's fault. You
it
mean?
was his engineer that said it was Ericsson that hit him.
It was Leclerc who was behind him, and he was nowhere near him.
Yeah. But now he said that when he was warming his tyres, he accidentally caught a button on the steering wheel and changed the brake shape.
What was it, the handbrake?
Well,
he reverted into teenage mode. Saw a vaguely attractive girl in the crowd and thought, "Watch this!" Got it horrifically wrong.
And tried to pull a wheelie on his rally chopper.
Yeah.
In the Grosjean situation, first off, hats off to Grosjean. He was in 6th place. He started last on the grid. He was having a great run at that time.
Yeah, he was.
But,
Yeah.
I'd also like to say, if you watch that replay again, that car starts to wheel spin when after the car is broken away. It's wheel spinning at a point where you would not expect him to be on the throttle. You would think, okay, if the car's gone, he's not going to be gassing it. And yet, if you hear the engine revs, they pick up, as almost as though it's driving him into the wall. So something very odd happened there, and I'm not certain that it was Grosjean's fault. It may well have been Grosjean flicked the wrong switch at the wrong time or everything, but it did seem to me like, well, that was the weirdest accident I've seen. There was no reason at all why you should have crashed there, and the car and the revs pick up in a very peculiar manner. So. For me, the jury is out. Yeah,
it just seems very mysterious.
Yeah, it's a fair point, because it did kind of look like Grosjean did essentially what Jolyon Palmer did in Monaco, albeit in the dry, not in the wet. Where he just sort of smashed, just got on the wrong line and smashed his car into the wall. But it's interesting that you mentioned about the res picking up. I'll have to have another look at a replay of that and just see exactly what might have happened, whether it might have been a powertrain issue or something, dealing with the low revs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know enough about what's going on the Haas steering wheel to know what button or what switch he might have put on at the wrong moment. But
yeah,
it did seem like, okay, on a good day, he makes it through that corner every single time. No professional driver is going to crash in that situation. So to me, it was such a ridiculous accident that I find it hard to believe that someone with Romain Grosjean's experience or any F1 experience would crash it in that situation. So I reserving judgment until in possession of full facts.
Romain Grosjean does have experience of crashing into the wall while going slowly, though, doesn't he?
Brazil 2016.
Well, that was extenuating circumstances, because that was extremely wet. And that's his first encounter. When he crashed in that situation, it was his first encounter with where the rivers were on the racetrack. So, on another day he spins and gets away with it. Anywhere, in fact, most places on the track, in Interlagos, he'd spin and get away with it. Unfortunately for him, he spun on those the left-hand sweepers up towards the finish line, where there is no
Concrete
runoff.
walls.
So yeah, so it's just like good night. You know, if on another day you get away with that, but yeah. As I said, I refuse to condemn because it just seems so weird, and the evidence presented so far leaves enough corridor of uncertainty, as a famous Yorkshireman would say. That, yeah.
Then, of course, we get K-Mag, who it may be that his coming together with Gasly actually affected the result, because it may well have been debris from...
They've got to look retrospectively
that
at coming-
accident.
got to look retrospectively at that coming together as well, haven't they? Surely they can't. I mean, FOM have put that video out today, which I only saw when Lee showed it to us just before we started recording.
They gave him a 10-second penalty and 2 points on his licence, which now he's up to 8, I believe. 4 points off a ban. I can't remember when the first ones came in, but...
You can't tell the FIA to suck his balls, can he?
No. Well, he probably could, but I don't think it would go down all that well.
That was atrocious. Magnussen 13th, last of the runners as well. But I mean that move on Gasly, if you haven't seen it, go and watch it. It's terrible. Last of the runners though, I don't really know what happened to K-Mag during the race. Didn't really see an awful lot of him. Didn't even see what happened with Gasly until today.
Until this morning.
Yeah.
He wasn't doing... He didn't seem to be doing a great deal during the race But that's the usual binary Haas thing, isn't it? You get one driver doing well, you get another one doing badly, and it was Grosjean's turn to be high up the order this week. And I don't know what Haas are doing.
Sean, do you think this is another?
Is this where I come in?
I was going to say
US perspective, because I've got all the inside track on Haas because they're here.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, do you think this is the beginning of sort of Haas's? We spoke in pre-season about where Haas always start really strongly, and people were, pre-season, everyone was saying how strong the Haas looked in testing, but I think it was when we had you on just in the pre-season, you said that Haas always start the season strongly and then sort of just fall away a little bit because they haven't quite got the resources and the manpower that the rest of the teams have got. Is this the beginning, do you think, of Haas's sort of slowdown now that we're about to go into the European season? The first few flyaway races are done.
Well, first off, we should put this into context. If Grosjean doesn't hit the wall, then Grosjean finishes 5th, minimum, because Bottas was out of the race. So you think, well, wow, look, Haas have just equaled their best ever result. Again, what a great day for Haas from the back of the grid. Overcoming a broken gearbox to do that. Great day, guys. But, on these small things, it changes the perspective completely.
Yeah.
I would say that they are not... the slump hasn't taken effect yet in terms of they're not... It's not like they're Q1 fodder. You're not sitting there watching them and thinking, on pace alone, they won't make it to Q2. They should make it to Q2 on a given day. Yes. But also... the fact that they've bought in a lot of components from Ferrari, inevitably, okay, so you guys are not really developing this, you're just buying it off the shelf from Ferrari? Well, development carries on 24 hours a day. So eventually this stuff's going to become, outdated. You're going to go backwards. So, as I said, they have to capitalize early in the season. But they could have had a big day in Baku. It kind of slipped through their fingers at the last minute. And they've had that, obviously, in Melbourne. Melbourne would have been a great day. And it was just a balls up. And suddenly it turned into double retirement.
Yeah.
In the case of Kevin's driving, I don't want to say the balls were sucked, but they were certainly tinkled. Because the move he made on Gasly, I mean, Pierre Gasly must have like PTSD after this weekend, because he nearly ended up in the Black Sea at the back of Brendan Hartley in qualifying, and then Magnussen tries to do the same thing to him in the race. He must be thinking, Mike, I've used up 2 of my 9 lives in the one day, or the one race.
Yeah, but props to him for not backing out, though. If you watch that replay, as I've just told listeners to go and watch if they haven't seen it yet, he doesn't back out completely. He might sort of lift off just to sort of adjust his, get his bearings again. But he doesn't back right out of it and think, okay, I'll have another go in a couple of laps. He's still trying to get past at the end of that straight.
Yeah, and it's good. It's good that Gasly gets stuck in there because Magnussen knows that, okay, this guy is not going to back down, and if I pull that kind of behaviour again, we could have a massive shunt. So got away with it this time, but I would call into question Magnussen's driving ethics because it's not the first time we've had this conversation about him, and eventually you have to conclude that there will be an almighty accident if you keep driving this way. Much the same as we had with Max Verstappen, particularly a couple of years ago in 2016, when people were saying, look, you're moving in the braking zone, what are you doing? Eventually, someone's going, I don't want to be overly dramatic, but as I always say, if you keep doing that, eventually somebody's going over the fence, and there's spectators and marshals and all that kind of stuff back there.
So that overtake, the lack of overtake, the move that Magnussen put on Gasly, that was similar to what Schumacher did on Barrichello one year. What race was that?
That was the 2010 Hungarian Grand Prix, and it was the first example of Michael Schumacher discovering that officialdom had moved on from his era, because he had spent majority of his era swerving all over the racetrack. It really, I think it started to change in Monaco in 2006 when the stewards of the meeting were desperate to let Schumacher go and keep his pole position. And what happened was that all the journalists were crowded outside the steward's office in Monaco at 10 p.m. that night on the Saturday, after he'd done that deliberate stop to stop Alonso taking pole. And eventually the stewards said, okay, we'll put him to the back. To me, it was an example of people power, because I really don't think, a steward's decision doesn't take place at 10 o'clock at night when the qualifying was at 2 in the afternoon. It doesn't take 8 hours to deliberate over that stuff. So I think it was an example that, okay, they're really not going to let us out alive if we let Schumacher get away with this. So we're going to put him to the back. And then from that day on, things started to change a bit. And now there's a little bit more, egalitarianism in the whole thing.
Right, Toro Rosso next. We've already touched on Gasly, as K-Mag already did.
Yep.
Brandon Hartley, though, 10th place. Was that the first time, would I be right in thinking, that he's actually been inside the top 10 during a race?
I don't think it was the first time he'd ran in the top 10 during a race, but it was certainly the first time he'd scored points in the race. I believe he ran in the top 10 in China as well. But, it was the first time a Kiwi driver, a New Zealand driver, had scored points. Since when, gentlemen? Since when?
Denny Hulme?
Nope.
Not Denny Hulme.
Not Denny Hume. In that case, I can't remember.
And it's Holm, gentlemen.
Any
Holm.
Kiwis?
It is Denny Holm.
Oh.
Dennis
Holm.
Holm.
Holme. Chris Amon's the only other New Zealand driver that I'm bringing to mind at the moment.
It is Chris Amon. It was Chris Amon. Can anybody tell me? I'll give points for all of them. I'll give points for a year. I'll give points for a race, and I'll give points for a chassis. Carry on. We can come back to this. This could be a slow burner statistic. But yes, Chris Amon is the correct driver.
A slow shunt.
Indeed.
Chris Amon is the correct driver, so we just need a year, a chassis, and a race.
Yeah.
So it's not one of Nico Rosberg's bizarre other licenses that isn't Rosbergian.
No, exactly. Yeah.
But Hartley, I don't know what anyone else thinks, but I think he needed that result this week because...
Been under pressure.
I think, yeah. And of course, he's back in the Red Bull meat grinder for a second session.
Yeah.
And I think he's the oldest driver to be in their young driver program, which Toro Rosso technically is. I think he's the oldest one ever.
Probably.
Quite possibly.
What was he,
one to get out
27?
alive, let alone come back.
I don't know, Jean-Eric Verne didn't do bad in the Formula E at the weekend.
Yeah, but we haven't seen his hands or his toes.
What have you thought about Brandon Hartley so far, apart from the appalling look that he's had with bits of the car breaking down around him?
Good hair.
He does have wonderful hair. He does have young driver hair. Even if he is an old driver, he has young driver hair. I must say I'm underwhelmed. I mean no disrespect when I say this to someone who's won LMP1 races and so on and Le Mans. I don't feel as though that he's done much so far to justify his selection. I know it's harsh to say it, but it's true. That's not to say that there won't be some big breakthrough, but I've been particularly underwhelmed. And the person I feel particularly bad for is Danica Fiat, who until Gasly scored in Bahrain, Danica Fiat was the last man to score for Toro Rosso, which I know must have really annoyed them a bit. The fact that, okay, Fiat's the only guy who scored for us since we started playing all these driver switcheroos. Whereas Brendan hadn't really brought anything to the table. And obviously it was his point this weekend was fortuitous, but let's hope that that's a breakthrough and that he finds the form that he's looking for, because I can well imagine, I can well understand why the pressure is starting to get onto him now, because it's important to look at this dispassionately and say, well, Brendan Hartley came into Toro Rosso under somewhat romantic pretenses, like, the guy was down and out, he was rejected by Red Bull, went away, reshaped his career, won Le Mans, and look at this, never give up, he's back. Isn't it a great story? Yeah, that's a great story. That's also we're several months away from that now. So now you've got to start delivering the results. And when Gasly throws down, top 5 on the grid, 4th place finishes, gives Toro Rosso one of, I think that was only their 7th top 4 finish in the history of the constructor. When Gasly does that and Hartley's getting knocked out in Q1, then obviously that's where the pressure comes from. If Gasly was doing just as badly, it would be different. Fast forward to Baku, and Hartley nearly clears Gasly for Toro Rosso flight 10 to the Black Sea. So yeah, he definitely needed that point, because based on what I've seen in his performance so far, he's definitely below par. And I think if Danica Fiat was in that car, he'd be quicker. Now, you can argue that Toro Rosso is here as a young driver program, and maybe Danica Fiat's had his turn, and that would be a valid point. But at the same time, this is Brendan Hartley's turn. He needs to show why he needs to be kept. So that's where the pressure's coming from.
I think it's more an engine test bed anyway this year, isn't it, than a young driver program? That's
I
a
valid
argument, I would say. And so far, you would say that Honda are passing the test. I mean, they certainly, the divorce between McLaren and Honda seems to have mutually benefited both parties, because for whatever reason, Honda go a lot better when they're not in a McLaren, and McLaren go a lot better when they don't have a Honda. So, maybe it was...
Yeah, whichever one you speak to, they're really happy with the decision and just getting on with their lives.
Exactly. It just, the only thing is that will it be like a typical ex-couple who the flame doesn't go out, and then a couple of years' time they'll end up shagging because they just think, well, we're still attracted to each other, but we've gone different ways. So who knows?
Which one of them got the vinyl and which one of them got the CD?
Yes. See, these are big things. We don't know. We'd have to ask people in Woking that question.
Yeah, we tried that. They asked us to leave the building.
Oh yeah. Oh, right.
I like the idea of Eric Boulier now saying, "Oh well, we're still really good friends."
Right. Yeah. Still like to cuddle.
But
is it okay to hug? No, I'm just going to. Is it? Can I? Is it? No, it's fine. I'll just leave it.
Well,
there's no sense on us both going home alone.
Honda are away off with this Italian bird now, and they're big on that. So, I mean, all credit to them. All credit to them, because Gasly's finish in Bahrain was the best result for a Honda turbo hybrid car, and it was proof by finishing higher in that race than McLaren had ever managed with the Honda engine. It was proof that the problems at McLaren in that period were not entirely inflicted by Honda, because we haven't, I know Gasly had a power unit failure in Australia, but we haven't had that porous reliability problems that McLaren seem to have. It could just be that McLaren were just overly ambitious with what they expected to do with Honda, and they paid the penalty for accordingly.
Right, on to Sauber. Driver of the day, Charles Leclerc, with his first points finish.
Yeah, he was 3 legs, 4 wheels driver of the day, and also the FIA official driver of the day.
But we know which one's more important.
Sean's got a brilliant stat about Monegasque drivers, haven't you, Sean?
Why, yes, I do. In fact, if I may throw in probably the umpteenth humble brag that I've ever had on a Three Legs, Four Wheels podcast. I'm a member of the Automobile Club de Monaco, and I informed them of this statistic, which they promptly tweeted out this morning, which is kind of cool because I'm like, look at me, I'm an ACM, I'm legit now, I've made it. That's it now.
I'm a member.
Yeah. You love me. You really love me, ACM. Yes, so Charles Leclerc, first Monegasque driver in the points since Louis Chiron finished on the podium in the 1950 Monaco Grand Prix, the second World Championship race ever held, won by Juan Manuel Fangio, the slowest race in Formula One history, officially. And there has been 978 races in between, and now we have Monegasque driver in the points again. By my reckoning, among any reasonable statistical category, that is the longest interval between two occurrences for anything. So the entire Principality of Monaco may rejoice, fireworks, ticker tape parade, whatever you want. But well done, Charles Leclerc, because sixth place was the best for a Sauber since Suzuka 2015. It's a car that we don't really concentrate on because I think we're all comfortable with the notion that Sauber are going to bring up the rear of the field, and Leclerc emphatically did not do that this weekend, and neither did Ericsson. Ericsson was only a couple of tenths away from being in the points as well. But Leclerc was phenomenal, and it was anyone who watches Formula 2, who saw Leclerc last season, knew full well that this is the kind of thing he was capable of because he absolutely owned everyone in F2. He made them look like amateurs. Won it with 3 races to spare, the first Formula 2 driver to win the championship as a teenager. And he was just phenomenal. So we knew he was a known quantity coming into it. But the thing is how much can you show that in modern day Formula 1 in an uncompetitive car? And I think we always value talents for the future based upon what they do in an uncompetitive car. Think about Vettel winning for Toro Rosso, for instance. That's probably the best recent example. I know everyone thinks of like Senna in the Tolman, for instance, as another one. For Leclerc to finish 6th was a phenomenal achievement. And we lived in a world briefly yesterday where Leclerc was in DRS range of overtaking Vettel for 4th place in a Grand Prix with 2 laps remaining. I mean, that's just not a thing that happens that often. So, well done to him, I would say. Now, if we come back to the fact that we don't know this Chris Amon stat, we still haven't got a race, a year, or a car.
Oh no, we haven't done this yet.
No.
Have we?
If I can add another one to the ether, that's the first. In fact, the first top 6 finish for any car with Alfa Romeo branding since who, what, when, and where.
Well, God, I reckon we're going to have to look back towards the early 80s incarnation of Alfa Romeo.
Don't let me distract you from the Chris Amon thing, by the way.
Thingy cars, but I'm going to say roughly 1983. Mm-hmm. So that's a positive start.
Right,
Who was driving for Brabham?
Brabham drivers round about then.
Was Patrese driving for Brabham in '83?
Patrese was driving for Brabham, and they had a BMW engine.
Right. Okay.
But I will give you this though. Riccardo Patrese is the correct driver because Riccardo Patrese. I'm not gonna string this one out because I want you to go for the Chris Amon one. Riccardo Patrese at the Nürburgring in 1984 finished in the top 6. It had not happened again for an Alfa Romeo branded car until Sunday. So that's a nice little pick me up for the Alfa team there. Winners of the very first Formula One race. And I guess if that car ever wins, if Sauber win, they will usurp the Monaco stat that I just mentioned because they will then have the longest interval, Alfa Romeo would, between a branded car winning a Grand Prix first time and the last time because they won the very first race. I suppose you could also say Pirelli would have that as well because, of course, Pirelli won the first Grand Prix. Anyway, I'm freestyling now. I'm just going off rambling and everything. It's amazing. It's amazing sometimes that I ever touched a girl, really.
Freestyle stats.
Anyway, yes, Chris Amon.
I'm going to say Dutch Grand Prix 1972.
Anybody else?
It's wrong then. It was a complete guess.
No idea.
Pulled out my ass if nowhere else.
South Africa 71.
Is that it?
No
No?
idea.
Lee,
Monaco 68.
What was that? That's 78, I heard.
68.
68? What the hell? Wait.
I don't know.
No, you're way off. It was the 1976 Spanish Grand Prix.
Go on then,
Chris
Sean.
Amon in the enzyme scored.
76.
I think he was sixth in that race. He might have been fifth. But yes, Enzyme, Harama 1976. Chris Amon, of course, who was witnessed or was racing the weekend of Niki Lauda's accident in 1976.
Yeah.
And that was the prelude to the end of his Formula One career, because after that he decided, okay, this is really not for me anymore. And I think that was his last weekend in racing in '76. That Nürburgring accident was the end of his career.
He had enough after that.
Yeah. And Nigel Roebuck used to tell a great story about how whenever he'd see Chris Amon, he would always be saying, I'm quitting the fags and the booze this year, and I'm going to get fit. And every time he saw Chris Amon thereafter, he'd always say that. It's like, I'm quitting the fags and the booze this time. Definitely this time. Never did get round to it.
Wow. Marcus Ericsson, I just want to quickly talk about him because he seems to have improved from last season.
No, he hasn't. He finished 11th again.
That's Esteban Gutierrez you're thinking of.
No, Ericsson finished 11th in Baku last year.
He's improved overall from last year. And we all know last year it was Stoffel's fault.
Apparently.
But anybody think that Ericsson is actually improving as a driver, finally?
Looks like
I
it.
think the car's getting
yeah,
better.
he's in a better car.
Yeah, the Alfa Romeo backing that Sauber have got is from Ferrari. It's it's just helping them out a little bit. I think they've got this year's Ferrari engines. That's that power unit appears to be an awful lot better than we thought it was going to be. Than most people thought it was going to be, and I think that's what's helping Sauber along. These races where there are really long straights. Like Baku.
It was something that they couldn't do last year. Going a straight
The
line
Ferrari
quickly.
power unit, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it should be remembered, of course, that Sauber last year were using a year-old engine. So, obviously there was going to be a jump in performance there. Having Alpha come in, or Fiat, however you want to term it, obviously affords some sort
Put
of
their name
financial
on the car.
And in the case of Ericsson, I would say that he has been in Formula One much as he was in his GP2 career, which is steady, capable of putting in a good result here and there. But almost, in a way, and this almost sounds like disparaging to Ericsson, who, let's face it, is a Grand Prix driver and has stuck in there for several seasons now. He's almost the litmus test for the driver in the other seat. And the fact that he was able to put manners on Felipe Nasr was the end of Nasr's career, because Nasr was a hot young thing. Wehrlein came in. Wehrlein got some good results, but ultimately has found his way out of Formula One. And now Leclerc is in there. And of those three that I just mentioned, Leclerc is the most shining talent of them all, because Leclerc is serious talent. Leclerc is potentially in the Hamilton, Rosberg mold, in that kind of what his maximum, what his ceiling could be. And it will be an interesting battle. The fact that Ericsson was out-qualified Leclerc in the first couple of races, it looked like Leclerc maybe wasn't getting a handle on it, but it only takes one race, and we saw this in Azerbaijan. Now suddenly Leclerc, we're looking at him a lot different and thinking, oh, he can do it in Formula One.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, it's always interesting, but it's funny how things can just turn around so quickly. As you were saying about perspectives before, a small thing can change your perspective entirely. Renault, have we got up next, Paul?
Yes, it is Renault next. Hulk, not much of a race to talk about.
He was doing all right. He was doing okay, Nico Hulkenberg. He was fighting up near the front. The Renaults overtook both the Red Bulls at the early doors.
Synchronised.
Yeah, synchronised. It looked like it was going to be a good, strong race for Renault, and then Hulkenberg just don't know if that was a tailwind or what it was, but he lost control, lost the back end, did he, going into one of the turns and clipped the wall.
It was a very un-Hulkenberg moment, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. He's usually quite steady, Hulkenberg. But Sainz finished 5th. He did actually pass Leclerc in those closing laps after the safety car.
Yeah, I mean, Sainz, that is his strongest Renault performance that I've seen so far. The question is now, is he going to keep it up? Because it's been a common theme on this podcast over the last few weeks that Hulkenberg is being a better driver for Renault than Sainz has been so far. This could be the shot in the arm that gives him the confidence to give him the boost that he needs.
Stat-wise, Sean, does it look like Hulkenberg or Sainz is the stronger driver at Renault at the moment?
Are you asking me that question now?
Yes.
Well, firstly, a note on Nico Hulkenberg doing a very un-Nico Hulkenberg thing. He hit the wall on Sunday while running 5th. Now, of course, the millstone around the neck is the fact that he has 138 Grand Prix going into Sunday without a podium finish. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. That is his thing now. Goes into the race, looks good, running 5th early on, hits the wall when under no pressure from anybody else, and throws away it might have been a podium. The way the race unfolded, we don't know where that was going.
Could have been a race win.
Who knows? It could have been a race win. Who knows? But certainly we could say, at the very least, a very good result. That is exactly what he did 12 months ago. In the Baku race in 2017, he was running 5th, and he hit the wall while under no pressure from anybody else. And that would have ended up being a podium. Given the penalties to Vettel and Hamilton subsequently and when all hell broke loose, he would have definitely been on the podium if he kept his nose clean in that race. For the second year in a row, and running in the same position, he does the same thing. And that's very, very annoying. For all of his consistency and, starting 7th, always best of the rest also, comes an opportunity like this, and he messed it up. Now, of course, as you mentioned, there could have been, the wind could have been a factor. They were all talking about the wind, and it did seem a very strange mistake for a driver to make so early in the race. But it is very, very frustrating when these opportunities come, and we all know that Baku will afford that opportunity. More than 50% of the drivers who have finished on the podium in Baku Formula One races have come from outside the top 5 on the grid. So we knew, okay, if you're going to finish on the podium, it's probably going to be this one. And unfortunately, he threw it away. Carlos Sainz picks up the pieces, finishes 5th, which, by the way, under the radar stat, Renault's best finish as a constructor since Canada 2011. People didn't realise that one. And, it's still a case of what might have been for Renault, because there was something that they really could have got out of this race that they didn't.
You really get the feeling at the minute that Renault are a team sort of on the ascension, don't you?
Well, it was always inevitable that they would be, in my mind, because after they inherited the Genie Capital Lotus team, which had no money left. They were lucky to make the end of the 2015 season. And once Renault, assuming that Renault were up for it, they were always going to move up the grid. They've had both cars in Q3 at every race this season. I tipped them. Somebody tweeted me earlier in the season, said, who do you see as the most likely race winner other than the big 3 teams? And I said, well, I think it would be Renault, because Renault have got the big manufacturer support. It'd be easy to say, Force India would be the most likely. To me, it's Renault, because Renault have got the big backing. And they have a very strong driver lineup, in my opinion. I think Hulkenberg would have more success in this sport, I think, if he was just a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more assertive. A bit more like Daniel Ricciardo, I would say. If he could channel the inner Daniel Ricciardo, he should go rent to Daniel Ricciardo's house, is what he should do. Play some Xbox.
Have a party.
Chill. Yeah, basically, yeah, that's what he should do. But again, Carlos Sainz come in, big reputation. Hulkenberg's out-qualified him at every race. So it's not that Hulkenberg's incapable of being very, very good. The problem is that these opportunities come along not very often. The opportunity was there. Everybody knew Baku is a bit of a weird race. Montreal has that same reputation. You don't want to
Yeah,
mess it up in those circumstances, because if you're just in the game late on at these racetracks, you've got a shot of a big result, and it didn't happen.
Right. Pull up a comfy chair. It's McLaren next.
Lee's favourite subject.
You ready to do your usual 20 minutes on this one, Lee?
No, I'm good to be honest.
You're all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, seventh for Alonso, ninth for Stoffel. On the face of it, double points finish, which it's continuing the improvement.
It is. I mean, I was surprised to see Fernando Alonso coming back to the pits at the end of that opening lap on 2 wheels. Not 3, 2 wheels. I think most drivers would have just given up and parked up.
He
if
was
it had been
just trying to outdo Sam Bird's Formula E finish.
Actually, Sean might be able to stat me out of confusion here. How on earth, after what happened to Alonso, did Alonso manage to be so far up the road from Van Dorn?
I think a lot of it was due to the timing of the safety car, because
Is it something to do with the fact that Van Dorn might actually be rubbish?
I don't think it's because Van Dorn's not very good, because Van Dorn came into F1 with the same reputation that Leclerc enjoys now. If anybody had seen Van Dorn in GP2, they'll know, wow, he basically wiped the floor with everyone for the best part of 2 seasons. The only reason he didn't win the championship in his first season was because he didn't quite get it together in the first 4 races. After the first 4 races, he was imperious. No one could touch him. But Jolyon Palmer was far enough ahead that he won the championship. So basically Van Dorn dominated GP2 for 2 seasons, which is basically unprecedented. And he clinched with 4 rounds to go, which is the longest, the earliest in a GP2 season anyone's ever clinched the title. So it's not that Van Dorn's not very good, but obviously it is Alonso in the other car. And as I said earlier, you really learn the value of a great driver when they're in a less than competitive car. And all credit to Alonso, who's stuck with it, and particularly on Sunday, because he could have just called it quits and just said, look, the car's damaged. We've got 2 punctures. We're at the back.
I think anyone else would have done. I think anyone else would have said no.
That's what he said himself.
Yeah,
He said after
but he did not do
was
that
it today or something like that. He said something like he thinks he's the only driver that could have finished the race in that car, let alone in the points.
Yeah, he was. Let me see here. It says here, I knew this, of course, that Alonso passed Van Dorn for position on lap 10. At the resumption of the race, Van Dorn was in 12th place, and Alonso was 17th. Sorry. So Alonso made pretty short work of, getting up through the field.
Everyone.
But of course, Alonso had changed tyres. Now, forgive me here, I don't remember what tyres he switched onto. But certainly, I think conserving tyres was not on his mind at that moment. So he made pretty quick inroads. He was up to, let's see here, he was up to 11th by lap 16. Then the tyres started to go away a little bit. Van Dorn pits before him, as you would. Alonso stays out. And Alonso is now ahead of Van Dorn. Van Dorn, who of course has now stopped. The safety car then comes out. Virtually everybody pits. But of course Alonso was ahead of Van Dorn at that moment. So the fortuitous timing of said safety car meant that Alonso basically got a free stop. And that's how he ended up ahead of Van Dorn.
But we are seeing better results from McLaren this year, regardless of whatever shenanigans are going on ahead of them. They're doing much better than they have been in the turbo era. It will be interesting to see how they perform when none of the front runners actually crash out,
Or the 2018 car turns up at the next race.
or we get to see the real car.
Yeah.
Because they've been threatening it, and so we get to see this in Spain. Apparently,
Apparently so.
I'll believe it when the covers come off.
Yeah, that's The McLaren have basically said that it's the launch of the MCL 33A, which is essentially 2018 car. They've been running the 2017 car with updates to aero and to fit around the Renault power unit package because they knew they weren't going to have the 2018 chassis ready. So they've just basically said we're going to launch the 2018 chassis in Spain. just wondering, what your take is on that, sort of how much truth is in that, and how much are McLaren just spitballing, or do they think that it's actually the start of their big campaign now?
Well, I would say that last year going into Spain, McLaren would have been treated with extreme cynicism because they couldn't get a car around a lap, let alone around a race distance. And if you remember last year, I think Alonso qualified 7th. It was a Herculean performance to get that car into Q3, it was phenomenal. Now, I don't know what McLaren have got up their sleeve, but certainly, obviously they've started a lot better this season than they did last season. I simply don't know the extent to which that car will be different. One place it does need to improve is in top speed, because in Australia and Bahrain, they were bottom of the speed trap. So obviously that wasn't a Honda thing, that was a McLaren thing. The Toro Rossos were in the top 10 in China, for instance. In fact, they've been in the top 10 in the traps at the first 4 races. So yeah, who knows what McLaren can bring? What we do know is that Barcelona is the ultimate chassis circuit on the calendar. So there'll be nowhere to hide if the chassis is not up to scratch. Alonso cannot drive around those problems. He has to have a car that is in some way good. He can't just manhandle it around Barcelona. I know that it looked like he did that last year, but in truth, it's probably more a bad reflection on Van Dorn. Van Dorn's qualifying was not very good that weekend. Obviously some of it is Alonso, but not all of it. So it will be nice to see. It would be nice if we could live in a world where McLaren say, we're bringing updates to the next race and they're going to be great. And they actually turn out to be great, because it's been a few years since we've had that.
Yeah, I can't remember the last time it actually worked.
The last really, really competitive McLaren was 2011, wasn't it? Really, I think.
Yeah.
Well, I think 2012 was pretty good. I mean, remember they locked out the front row for the first race of the season. Jenson Button won and so on. And then they won the last race of the season as well. And nothing since. And now they've gone more than 100 races without winning a Grand Prix. And no one, only two constructors. Yeah, only 2 constructors had gone longer with 100 races between wins. Do you know those 2 constructors, just as an aside?
I'm going to say, or I was going to say Williams leading up to the Pastor Maldonado win, but that might not have been 100 races.
Yep, Williams is one of them. That's right. Between Brazil 04 and Spain 2012 was the other one.
Okay.
God,
Team that's currently on the grid?
No.
No.
right.
Arrows?
Never won a race.
Oh no, of course not. I was thinking Damon Hill won then.
No, he didn't.
No,
I was
he
trying,
didn't.
I was trying to live in that other universe where I would have been happier.
Parallel
let it
universe
go.
at Hungary
Let it go.
97, yeah.
I suppose technically Renault, for all the years that they weren't a constructor.
But they're currently...
No,
in
it has to be
Formula One.
races, actually number of race starts, not
Just
time
Lotus count as
elapsed.
2 because we had 2 of them for a while.
Possibly. Might be Lotus with winning with Raikkonen. Was it Lotus?
No, because Lotus is obviously not...
Not really Lotus.
Yes, not really Lotus. But yes, if you could leave that, put that one in the back of your mind, and see if one of you spits it out while we're talking about something else.
I'm just going to throw Ligier.
Oh,
out
there it is. We have a winner. Thank you. A tenner to the man on the right.
Yes.
It was Ligier.
Oh,
of course,
so Monaco
Monaco
96,
19
but when was the one before
When was
that?
the one before that? I'm going to leave it you guys to answer that, as you are such esteemed experts.
Oh,
I'm
God,
sure
I
you
don't
know. Sure you know the last
You're the
Ligier
stat
win
man,
before
you tell
that.
us.
I can tell you that Jacques Lafitte won the Canadian Grand Prix in 1981, and they did not win again until Monaco 1996.
See, I was actually going to say Jacques Lafitte, but I had no idea exactly when it was going to be, because he's the only Ligier driver I can think of who probably won a race.
No, he wasn't the
Aside
only
from
Ligier
Olivier
driver
Panis.
to win.
Yeah.
There were several. Didier Pironi won his first Grand Prix for Ligier. Patrick Depailler won for Ligier. So yeah, he wasn't the only one.
Yeah. There would have been a few.
You say we've got him statting again.
Exactly.
We're not having to do the thinking.
That's it, absolutely.
He's back
So
to it.
we could dwell on McLaren for ages, but we should probably move on to the
I
next
think we've
team.
dwelt on
Yeah, for
McLaren
once
for
we're not
about
gonna
4
dwell on
years now,
McLaren.
in all fairness.
Yeah, we're still
since
waiting.
2012.
We're still waiting for Fernando to finish that first lap in the Honda.
Yeah.
Williams is up next on the running order. Lance Stroll really seems to like Baku.
Well, Williams as a whole were looking a lot stronger at this race than any others this season.
Yeah, Sorokin didn't qualify all that badly.
He raced pretty badly.
Yeah,
He got himself in a bit of a pickle. And yeah, that was. I suppose it was kind of 50-50, half unfortunate and half just.
what the hell's he doing?
Yeah.
But no, Lance Stroll getting eighth after finishing on the podium last year in what isn't as good a car as last year's was.
No, I don't think
I
so.
would say. Freak result, or do we think they've turned a corner?
No, I think Williams are still in trouble.
Yeah, I think it was a freak result. There was quite a lot of things going on ahead of them again, wasn't there?
That's how they get points.
Yeah, but all weekend they'd been stronger than at any other time this season. So it might be a freak circuit for them.
Can I interject here?
Yes,
You
of
may,
course.
you
Yeah,
may.
crack on.
Yeah, I would agree that the circumstances played into Williams' hands this weekend. This is Azerbaijan is basically this generation's Hockenheim when it comes to power and straight line speed being of importance. Williams have been in the basement this season in straight line speed, which you would think is a very un-Williams thing. Williams and Force India have been the two teams that have really dominated the speed traps in this era, this turbo hybrid era. Force India have retained that advantage, Williams not so, and that's contributed them to being back-to-back double Q1 eliminations in Bahrain and China. They'd never had that happen in the entire time we've had knockout qualifying. Williams had never lost both cars in Q1 at consecutive races until this season. So they're looking really in trouble. The only pointless team going into Baku. But Baku, as I said, is a latter-day Hockenheim when it comes to power and not so much power, of course, because everybody's got very similar power units, but when it comes to low drag. So it definitely played into their hands. Sirotkin was bottom of the speed traps in China. He was second fastest in the speed trap in Baku. And that makes obviously a major difference. It's still not going to get you around the corners, but there's not a lot of corners relative to straights in Baku. So that's what made the difference for them. So yes, I do concur that this is a track that let's say masks the problems that Williams face this season, and I don't think Williams are going to be looking forward to Barcelona. Let's put it that way.
No, do you agree with my sentiment and probably everybody else's sentiment around this table that Williams look like they're in financial and just sporting as well, and just in trouble in general?
I would agree that they don't look. They look in a precarious state right now. I don't think it's, I don't think it's irretrievable. I think that if another big sponsor comes in that are willing to replace Martini for next year, then everything looks a little bit rosier. But I would also say that although Felipe Massa says this is the penalty you pay for having two pay drivers essentially, we don't know for certain that Felipe would have done any better with this car. It could be that the car is just not very good. I have heard Paddy Lowe say that they've basically sacrificed the straight line speed advantage that they had of previous seasons with no tangible comeback in terms of a better lap time. So yeah, a lot of head scratching going on at Grove right now. And I don't know where the answer is, because at least the good thing is this. Cometh the hour, it was a crazy race and what have you, Lance Stroll got in the points. That's great. That's the opposite of the Nico Hülkenberg effect that I mentioned earlier, whereby, okay, the opportunity came along and Lance Stroll got the points. The same thing as he did last season, of course, because it was a crazy race last year, ended up on the podium. So, you do at least have that. And Lance Stroll deserves credit for that, because, it's not, he could have had a rush of blood to the head, and many drivers did on Sunday, but Stroll kept it on the island.
No, fair point. But as I said, and I said this last year, just to get up into the points, you've got to be in a position where you can take advantage of the gaps that are opening up in front of you when drivers are dropping out. And he seems to be good at doing that, especially in Baku.
He does, and he missed out on an obscure Formula One record in Baku, because if he'd finished 14th, he would have finished 14th in 4 straight races, which would have tied the all-time record for consecutive finishes in the same position that was not first, which is obviously, I mean, that's why you get into racing, so you can finish 14th 4 consecutive times, but he just missed it this time by accidentally scoring points.
And who holds that record?
There are several drivers who have done that. Mark Webber's done it, Nico Rosberg's done it, Michele Alboreto has done it. It's happened several times. Nelson Piquet did it. Yeah, it's happened a lot.
Were they all second places?
No, they were. No, Michele Alboreto finished 7th 4 times. Mark Webber finished 4th 4 times.
the Gutierrez of his
Nelson
day.
Piquet and Nico Rosberg finished 2nd 4 times. I think Lewis Hamilton's finished.
I'm
Lewis Hamilton
surely
may have done it as well,
Barrichello's
actually.
hit this.
It's got to the point now where I've stopped keeping score.
You're just waiting for Lance Stroll to break the record, and then you can just forget all the rest of them.
Yeah, exactly. Lance Stroll finishes, or Marcus Ericsson finishes 17th for the 5th consecutive race, which makes him the most important Swedish driver of all time. Never mind Ronnie Peterson. Marcus Ericsson has now...
I was going to say,
yeah.
Ronnie Peterson.
Yeah. So another obscure stat, Ericsson passed Stefan Johansson this weekend, 3rd most experienced Swedish driver of all time, behind Ronnie Peterson and which
Ronnie
other
Peterson
Swedish driver?
I'm out. No, there's a lot of head shaking around this
A
table.
lot of head shaking. I'll give you a clue.
Oh yeah, we're not doing
I'll
this.
give you a
one.
clue. He was the first Swedish driver to win a Grand Prix.
We should have been filming this one in 360 again with the blank expressions that
I'm
we've
just going to
got.
sit here and nurse my Starbucks as you wallow around trying to work out who this is. I guarantee that some of your listeners have already worked this one out. It was the Dutch Grand Prix of 1959.
Oh,
Anybody?
Nope.
Nope.
Okay, well, 5 bonus points goes from the
there are-
3 legs, 4
there
wheels.
Are thousands of people.
Yes, from the
screaming.
3 legs, 4 wheels podcast special, 5 bonus points to anybody who correctly named Joe Bonnier as the first Swedish driver to win a Grand Prix. Carry on.
Carry on indeed.
Sean's doing his own sort of like mini Total Shunts.
know,
He's stealing that.
Lee being usurped. Force India.
Is there a
next.
total shunt, by the way? Is there a total
binary
shunt
race.
actually happening in this show?
There will be.
There will
Okay,
be a total
great.
shot
Yeah.
in this show.
I'm
if-
looking
if-
forward to that one.
If the internet holds up. Yeah, the first clue is just going to be I was born, and you've got to get it from there.
I don't even give you the year.
Force India next. Perez in 3rd. Ocon, another first lap retirement, which I believe, because I heard this on TV and I was wondering where it came from. Every time Ocon has retired, it's always been on the first lap. Even going back to lower formulas.
Yes, I wonder who could have
Was that
come
one of
up with
yours?
a stat as incredibly insightful as that. Yes. Azerbaijan
Not brutal,
2018 goes with Interlagos 2017, the Macau F3 race of 2014, and the Nürburgring Euro F3 race of 2014. The last 4 single-seater retirements by Esteban Ocon have all been on the first lap. So he either gets through the first lap and finishes the race, or he's out. But once he gets to the end of lap 1, he's your man.
Do you blame him for that crash with Raikkonen? I certainly did. I think he closed a door that wasn't there to close, really.
Well, I don't know. I didn't have a strong opinion either way. I thought it amusing. I thought it amusing that Force India were livid about it in the heat of the moment, but then they finished on the podium and they were like, yeah, forget it, it's fine. Don't worry about it. Yeah, we're not going to bother with that. It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that other guy's on the podium as well. That doesn't matter. It's all right. It doesn't matter. But, you know, I just thought I don't think you can blame Esteban Ocon for inexperience anymore, because he's been, you know, this is his. Was this third full season? I'm lost count now. This is his second full season, isn't it? of
Yeah,
Formula One?
he's done 1.5 full seasons and a bit.
Yeah, so 1.5. Thanks for that one, Paul. But yeah, he's he's not inexperienced like that anymore. He should be checking his mirrors going into circuit, into corners like that, on circuits like that, and Raikkonen was well up alongside Ocon, and Raikkonen was lucky not to come away with any more damage than he came away with. Really, I mean, we saw in the replay a lot of what looked like polystyrene falling out of Esteban Ocon's car, but the I get the feeling he put himself out of that race.
Well,
I think he had more room on the outside to go around. He just cut it a little bit too fine.
I haven't, as I said, I don't have a strong opinion. I only saw it at the time. I haven't sat down and reviewed it. But it could be that Ocon looked in his mirrors, didn't see Perez, and thought, it's legit, I'm fine. And then before he knew it, he was in the boondocks. But of course, lest we forget, Raikkonen is the master of being involved in first lap accidents in Baku without getting any damage, because it also happened last year. So
Last year,
yeah, he's really good at like getting into contact where the car isn't damaged.
Yeah, and on the other end of the scale as well for Force India, Sergio Perez,
Quite a good race for him.
Yeah, despite the fact he broke some rules a couple of times, but he just somehow Sergio Perez did what Nico Hulkenberg could have done in this race. Slowly climbed up the order as people were dropping out and making pit stops and safety cars, and just managed to get into that third place at exactly the right time.
Yeah, and it's interesting you bring up the parallel with Nico Hulkenberg, because I was going to say that Sergio Perez has spent his career doing what Nico Hulkenberg can't do, and these guys have been teammates. They were teammates at Force India, and if you wanted to, it was always the case when they were teammates that if you wanted steady, consistent points, go for Nico Hulkenberg. If you want crash, bang, wallop, get on the podium every now and again, you go take Perez, because Perez has made a career out of opportunism like this. Not necessarily the most mind-blowing driver that you'll ever encounter in terms of raw pace, outpacing a teammate or what have you. But come off the hour, he's always there or thereabouts. And there it is again in Baku. It's incredible to me that that's the first time that Force India have had 2 podium finishes at the same racetrack, and they've been around for nearly 11 seasons now. That had never happened before. And the bigger stat for Sergio, and I was glad that he brought this up on social media because I've been peddling it for months, was that he finally broke Pedro Rodriguez's record for the most podium finishes by a Mexican driver. That was his 8th podium on Sunday. Pedro Rodriguez had 7, but Pedro Rodriguez, of course, is still the only Mexican driver to win a Grand Prix. And I've got to point to everybody who can tell me any of the 2 races that he won. Anybody? I put this out on the podcast as well.
The Mexican Grand Prix.
He did not win the Mexican Grand Prix.
Oh, it was worth a go.
Worth a shot. I'm gonna go for San Marino and Luxembourg.
San Marino and Luxembourg?
There was a Luxembourg Grand Prix.
What,
It was
in
in Germany.
1970?
Right?
What have you... What on about, man? No.
Apart from
It's almost,
that,
I
I've got
almost
nothing.
feel like, you know what? Danny Baker once said there should be yellow and red cards for things that happen in everyday life. For instance, when you open a door, like when the doors of a tube train open or anything like that, and the people get on, or same with the lift. If the lift doors open and people get on before letting you get off, that should be an automatic booking. What you just said there, that's an automatic booking in the Formula One world. You clearly know San Marino and Luxembourg were not on the calendar in the 60s, and you still said it. That's like deliberate handball. I'm booking you for that one.
No. Yeah, the Luxembourg Grand Prix at the Nürburgring.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yes,
No.
just like the Swiss
That
Grand
wasn't
Prix
a
at
thing.
Dijon.
But-
Exactly.
Or the European Grand Prix in Azerbaijan.
Yeah. Or the
For that
European
matter.
Grand Prix in all of them.
Yeah. By the way, just on the side, if we could just bring political discourse into an otherwise genial podcast. Kim Jong Un, of course, this week crossed the DMZ for the first time since the 1953 armistice of Korea that the leader of Korea has crossed into the south. Now, what I don't understand is why he made it so difficult for himself. If he wants to be a legitimate leader, laundering, all of the abuses of his country as an idiotic despot, why doesn't he just do what everybody else does and host a Grand Prix? That's much cheaper and takes a lot less time. So,
Oh, his opportunity's come and gone, Sean. Bernie Ecclestone doesn't run the sport anymore.
Just think, we could have a Formula One race
That was
around
always my
Pyongyang.
joke,
It
wasn't
would
it?
be fascinating, if nothing else.
Oh, no,
Well,
but-
would it be fascinating? No one would be allowed in unless you were paid to be
You know,
there.
you know what, you say this.
My
I mean,
joke was
obviously we're
always-
getting dangerously off topic here, but the fact that Pyongyang hosts a marathon every year, and that is open to outsiders. Foreigners can come in and run that race. Even I've investigated the possibility of running that race, so it's not beyond the realms of possibility. As mad as that sounds, that maybe one day that would happen. Anyway, we're getting off topic. Let's get back to whatever it was we were talking about. Something about North Korea.
Yeah,
Yes.
good idea.
Where were we? Oh, yes, Checo Perez. Now, the most successful driver in terms of podiums at the Baku circuit.
Yes,
Both of
indeed. Yes, indeed. And I can also say that Pedro Rodriguez has never won in Baku. So, yes, you can remove that from your list of Pedro Rodriguez wins if you're keeping score at home. We're still doing that part of the quiz, and it was a great achievement. And Baku, I mentioned earlier, more than 50% of the podium finishes in Baku come out from outside of the top 5 on the grid, and since the 2016 Monaco Grand Prix, the only time that anybody from outside of Mercedes, Ferrari or Red Bull has finished on the podium has been in Baku. In 2016, it was Perez for Force India. In 2017, it was Lance Stroll. In 2018, it's Perez again. So, going into this race from now on, this is, if you're racing a Sauber or well, basically if you're racing anything but the top 3, this is your big shot. So, yeah, well done to Perez for keeping it together and not doing what they did last year, because Force India threw away a 1-2 finish last year by colliding like a couple of idiots. Once they actually get round the racetrack, they're capable of big things on this track. I would also say, by the way, this applied to Williams as well. It's a straight line speed circuit, and that contributed to Force India's competitiveness or jumping competitiveness compared with the rest of the season so far.
Yeah, but again, in the pre-season show that you joined us for, Sean, you said that the Force India are much sort of the reverse of Haas. They start off slowly and tend to build up as the season goes on. If Baku might have been the start of the decline for Haas, as I said, we start going to the European season. Is this where Force India normally start picking things up and start running with the ball and somehow end up fourth again?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past them. It could be the start of something big. They do tend to accumulate points at a very respectable rate, without necessarily doing anything spectacular along the way. I wouldn't rule that out happening again this year. But the big unknown, I would say, apart from Renault's competitiveness, is the McLaren, because we don't know what that McLaren's going to be in Barcelona and afterwards. If that McLaren is as good as Eric Boullier seems to think it will be, well, we might have to revise our thinking.
We could actually see McLaren fourth instead of Force India for once.
McLaren, of course, are fourth in the Constructors' Championship right now. So, if McLaren are Force India for the time being, as strange as that is to say, McLaren are Force India. They're the ones who keep scoring these the lower points in every race, and that all adds up to a top 4 finish. And McLaren need it. Because there's not a lot of sponsorship on that car. McLaren need those results as well. So let's hope for their sake that upgrade is as good as they think.
Yeah, wasn't that the main part of Zach Brown's job to bring in sponsorship?
When he started, I think it was. Yeah.
There's lots of Kim Oa branding on that. I did that joke last week, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. I'll put a hat on that.
Jesus Christ, was that a joke?
No,
Fuck it.
no, I'm not classing that one as a joke. We'll just move on to Ferrari.
Now, you were talking earlier, Sean, about how Vettel can sometimes lose his head when things get a little bit tense. Do you think that's what he did when he went for that Ricciardo-style lunge after the safety car period, right at the end of the race?
I think Vettel knew that, if I refer back to something I said much earlier, Mercedes had a handle on the ultra-soft pace. They knew how pacey they were, and they knew that, based on what had happened on Friday, Mercedes were pretty good on the ultra-soft, contrary to expectations, contrary to popular belief, in fact. I think Vettel must have gone into it thinking, if I don't get him here, and he goes out of DRS range, this is done. I'm not going to get him. So it's easy to be wise after the fact, and it's easy to say Vettel should have hung back. He probably would have had another chance. Well, probably is a nice thing, but if you don't, you look like a bit of an idiot for not having a go when you did have a chance. And that's obviously what happened in the Red Bull collision as well. So I understand why Vettel had a go for it, because if he pulled that move off, as far as I was concerned, it was game, set and match, because Vettel, I didn't envisage a situation where Vettel would get repassed. I honestly thought, well, once Vettel gets into the lead, I kind of think, I said Mercedes were good, but they're not. I still think Vettel will have the edge. So I understand. Put it this way, I think Vettel, if you asked him, would make the same move the second time. He would still go for it because the win's on the line. What I think he wouldn't do, of course, is maybe not leave it quite so late on the brakes, because it wasn't the fact that he ran wide and let Bottas back through. It was the fact that he lost all those other positions. That's the thing that really annoyed him. But there you go. Win some, lose some.
Yeah, because he did drop behind Sainz at one point, briefly.
Yeah, and we nearly, and as I said, we ended up in a world where Charles Leclerc was in DRS range in a Sauber to pass Sebastian Vettel's Ferrari, legitimately in a race. Like what? The sky is falling, gentlemen.
As an aside, it was very hard to tell where the Renaults were at most given points in the race because they were having transponder problems again, and the timing screen was all over the place. Because at one point, Sainz was running 17th, 1 minute and 47 seconds off the car in front.
Yeah.
And then he was sixth.
And then he was sixth again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Leclerc had the same problem at one stage, so it was all the fun of the fair. But it was one of those situations where it was like, don't look at the graphics, just look at the actual race. You can see him there.
Going back to Ferrari though, and I know we've just sort of spoken about the closing stages there. Early doors when they pitted Raikkonen and he went onto the soft tyres and it looked like he was going to be well, I think he did do the whole of the race until that very late safety car period. But I actually thought that strategy-wise, and you'll be exactly the man to ask this. I actually thought strategy-wise, Ferrari basically put themselves in a position to go 1-2. With Vettel making a late stop and Raikkonen having going a really, really long second stint, much like Rosberg did in Russia a few years ago. That's what they were looking at. Ferrari were aiming for a 1-2, and it looked like they had the pace to do it as well. But Raikkonen's pace mid-race just dropped right off. Was that just tyre management, or was it just a case of just the pace drops off after a certain point?
Well, I would contend the notion that Ferrari had set themselves up for a 1-2. As far as I was concerned, Ferrari were throwing the race away by pitting Vettel when they did. I saw no significant degradation in that super soft around the time that Vettel had pitted. So, to me, there was nothing to be lost by just leaving him out. And that was the same strategy employed by Mercedes. And Toto Wolff in the post-race interview said that, yes, in our team meeting this morning, we basically decided let's just leave them out for as long as we can get away with. And who knows, we might be able to make it all the way to the point where we can transition to an ultra soft. And an important caveat should be made here in that all the teams had one set of super soft tyres left. So it was always going to be a case whereby they're either going to move to ultras or they're going to move to softs. Well, obviously, if you've only got 20 laps left, you don't really want the soft. You want the ultra. So you're just trying to eke it out long enough that you can get to the ultra. So when Vettel pitted, and I tweeted this in real time, I said I would have left him out. I don't think that this is, if this stays green to the end, Vettel can still win the race, but Bottas is going to be potentially catching him at the end, and it's just a little bit too close for comfort. So we never know whether that would have happened or not. Now we don't know, but it was certainly a situation where I thought, no, I'm leaving him out. And it seems that Mercedes would have concurred with that. And there's certainly, I would have expected Vettel probably to hang on, but there was definitely a chance that Bottas could have caught him.
And that would have been a really sort of classic end to the race rather than what we got. Somebody on faster tyres catching somebody who maybe didn't quite have their strategy right.
Yeah, it would have been deja vu as well, because Valtteri last year in the race actually had to catch Lance Stroll at the end. So he was chasing what seemed like a lost cause and then pipped him by 0.1. And I was sitting there thinking, are we going to have that again, but except it's going to be for the race victory? Bottas charging to try and catch Vettel on fading tyres. And I thought, well, wouldn't it be an amazing finish if that happens? But yeah, again, we were denied it. So, there we go.
Yeah. In that case, I think we can blame K-Mag for that.
Yeah, we definitely can. Yeah.
And that leaves us with Mercedes. Like you said before, Hamilton's win where he led the least amount of laps.
He said it was an untidy race, didn't he?
Yeah.
Which, uncharacteristic for Lewis Hamilton, but it kind of sums up his 2018 season. Something good comes out of him not being very good.
They say to win championships, you've got to make your own luck. Also, possibly the most Finnish answer from Bottas when he was asked what was he going to do to sort himself out after that, and 10 pints.
10 pints of beer, yeah. I don't know, maybe 10 pints of beer. I think that was his answer, wasn't it, to the only thing that can numb this pain?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe 10 pints of beer.
Yeah, it was a real shame because, I mean, Bottas was within 3 laps of being the 50th win for a Finnish driver in Formula One.
But Lewis just right place at the right time.
Yeah. That's how it goes sometimes. It's just it kind of fell into his lap a bit, really. But I couldn't say. I mean, I can't honestly say that Bottas did anything wrong. It was just dumb luck. I mean, but you could argue that last season with Lewis, of course, because Lewis had the loose headrest situation last year, and potentially lost a win there. So it what goes around comes around.
Yeah, I guess that sort of in the grand universal scheme of things balances it all out.
Not really, because Bottas didn't deserve bad luck, did he? After he did a better job of that race than Lewis Hamilton did, and he was kind of gifted to Lewis Hamilton right at the end. I think it's incredibly unlucky for Bottas, but again, Hamilton's engine blow up in, was it 2016 in Malaysia?
Yeah.
These things do happen in motor racing, and you've got to take them as well as the win that the Lewis inherited, race just gone. So he might not have felt much like celebrating, but it's still 25 points.
Yeah.
And it's a long season.
You mentioned the engine failure. You mentioned the engine failure in Malaysia, of course. That was the last time that Hamilton didn't score in a race. 29 consecutive points finishes now, an all-time F1 record.
That's it. Is he got the record now?
He has got the record now.
For the most consecutive points
outright.
finishes, or is
He passed
close to it?
Kimi Raikkonen's
Yeah, he
record
has
in
got the
China.
record.
That is how championships are won.
Just by consistency.
So
But he's got to be consistently good, though. You can't just be consistently having an untidy race, because it will catch up with him eventually.
Yeah, I would say untidy is one thing, but if you look at the Drivers' Championship, it does appear to refute that suggestion. It's worth remembering that last season, Lewis Hamilton didn't lead the championship until Italy, which was the 13th round of the championship. Already he's in the lead after 4 rounds. So even if it's haphazard and maybe even fluky, I don't think Lewis would swap.
No, absolutely not. But we're all in agreement, though, aren't we? The Formula One in 2018 so far has been absolutely brilliant. We've not had what we would call a dull race at all whatsoever. There's been action, drama. All right, not all of it's been racing, but it's been action-packed, and it's been good, as Sean was saying before, it's been good television, to sit down and watch. For the neutral fan who, Liberty and as F1 are trying to attract. This is what Formula One should be like. We've been spoiled so far this year.
Yeah, as a fan, what I want is to sit down on a Sunday afternoon and not know who's going to win the race. And that's what we're getting this year.
Yeah. And we've not been able to say that for a long time.
I think, like Sean said about this race, though, we knew at the beginning of the race who was going to win the race, but accidents stopped that happening. Joe, that was Vettel's race. I think it would have been quite a boring race for the win if it wasn't for shenanigans.
That is true. But there was
Shenanigans
shenanigans.
happened.
Yeah.
And I would also add that Australia was a very processional race. And after Australia, all I heard was, we've got to fix overtaking. The halo sucks. And if you're in America, the broadcast was terrible because, and it was. They did make they did score a few own goals with the broadcast in this country.
We heard from our listeners about
all of that's gone away now. Yeah, all of that's gone away now because everyone's got used to the halo, just like they get used to every other safety change by the second race of a season.
Oh, and the halo graphics.
And we've had a few pretty good races. China was a very good race. Baku was a good race, but it was kind of a fluke because I think we would have had something where I think what we would have ended up with was Bottas forlornly trying to chase down Vettel and probably running out of laps. Is probably how it would have ended had that Red Bull collision not happened.
I think most of the point would have been whether he would have actually made the pass this time anyway.
After Bahrain.
Yeah, backed out of it.
Yeah, I think after what happened in Bahrain, I think he would have felt contractually obligated to have a go.
So Hamilton would have still won the race.
Yes. That's quite well. What an amazing finish that would have been! These two Pratts go off into the boondocks, and Hamilton wins, leading the last lap only. Like, wee, wee. Okay, fair enough.
That would have been even more untidy than his hair this week. Yeah, somebody tweeted in Lewis's hair game discuss. Terrible. I'm done.
Bizarre. Yeah, Dennis Rodman-esque.
That's what you get for going to Coachella.
Lucky hair. Hey, I can't cast any aspersions. I'm a SoCal transplant myself. I know. I'm all about the hipster scene in Southern California. So I've actually got my braids in right now.
I suppose it is lucky hair. I mean, it wasn't even on his head a few years ago.
Yeah, it was sliding down the back.
Sure.
But gentlemen, Pedro Rodriguez. We haven't got the wins for Pedro Rodriguez. Anyway, I'm sure the listeners are screaming them out like it's like the audience on Play Your Cards Right. Just whatever you're in.
Brazil and Italy.
There's two of them. No.
South Africa and Germany.
South Africa is right.
Ooh.
South Africa, while you're thinking, I'll give you a little bit of colour to that. South Africa, 1967. It was the last win. Pedro Rodriguez's first win was Cooper's last win in Formula One. It was the last win for a Maserati engine in Formula One. And it was almost a shock win for the Rhodesian local driver, John Love, who was all set to win the race as a local privateer driver when he ran out of fuel. And he ended up second. And Pedro Rodriguez was the recipient of that good fortune to win the 1967 South African Grand Prix. But there's one other race as well.
US Grand Prix.
No. You see, you guys really are guessing. The Dutch Grand Prix in 1971 was Pedro Rodriguez's last podium finish, and that was the record, 7 podiums until
That's
yesterday.
what you must be getting confused with.
Must be. Yeah. No, I'm just throwing races that used to be around in the 70s.
All right,
Races.
I'll put everybody out of your misery. It was the 1970 Belgian Grand Prix was won by Pedro Rodriguez, and that race, which is the last Grand Prix held at the old Spa-Francorchamps, remains the fastest Grand Prix in the history of the World Championship that was not held at Monza. Can you believe that?
I can remember things from when I started watching the sport, and I've read up on things that happened before I started watching the sport, and I've watched documentaries and things, but I can't always take it in quite the same way that Sean can.
Get to my age and I can't remember where my keys are.
I mean, I don't know where I pulled that Jan Magnussen finished 10th thing from the other week.
What was, just out of interest, what was everybody's first Grand Prix in this round table here? What was everybody's first recognisable memory of watching a Grand Prix?
1992 San Marino Grand Prix.
I would probably say 84 British Grand Prix.
The Senna getting a lift from Mansell, that was a 91 British Grand Prix, wasn't it?
I was there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that your first race that you went to?
That was the first one
that
I
was
went to.
That was my 11th birthday that
Was it?
day.
I think-
when Senna got the lift from Mansell was my 11th
I can
birthday
remember
that
that.
very day.
I can remember that very vividly, but I also remember that season getting up. I think was it that season or was it the following year? Getting up very early for the Japanese Grand Prix. And Mansell, 92 that was. Mansell
Yeah,
caught
it was
fire.
that year.
Was it when Mansell caught fire? Was it 91 or 92 his car?
No,
he
it
was leading in his car.
The
caught
BBC
fire.
showed Japan live in 1991, and they came up at 4:50 for a 5 a.m. race
Yeah.
start. Sorry, and I remember I was at the same boat there. I remember waking up at like 4:45 alarm and switching on the television in my bedroom, thinking this is terribly exotic. Getting to watch live television from Japan. It's amazing where we've come now in terms of communications. I mean, this podcast is a good example. I'm on the other side of the Atlantic,
Exactly, yeah.
and it's like now it's no big deal. But people forget that 25 years ago it just felt like the height of exoticism. Wow, look at this like totally different culture from the other side of the world, and we're right there live.
Yeah, I can remember getting up to watch that. So 1991, sort of mid to late 1991 is my first season of Formula One. 92 is my first full season.
I do remember the '92 Grand Prix because that was back in the olden days when I was DJing in rock clubs. So I didn't get up for it. I finished work at 2 a.m., went for a curry, and got home in time for it.
No, I'm wrong. Sorry, it was 94, wasn't it? Because it was Senna's.
94, so you're a little bit later.
Yeah. But isn't it Senna's death day today?
1st of May.
Yeah.
That's
tomorrow.
Today is the anniversary.
Today.
Today is the anniversary of the death of Roland Ratzenberger, as you mentioned, and Roland Ratzenberger, a model of Roland Ratzenberger's Simtek, actually sits on top of my cooker in the kitchen. I don't have a Senna model, but I do have a Ratzenberger model, and part of the reason. It's going to seem like a morbid segue here, but it's actually my fiance's birthday today as well. And I always mention this, April the 30th. It was always, to me, it always associates with Roland, who I remembered from when he used to compete in British Formula 3.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, he had an Alfa Romeo engine there. There's another Alfa reference. And he had sponsorship from ATS Wheels, which used to be run by Hans Günther Schmidt, who was a crazy dude. The people are familiar with 70s and 80s Grand Prix history. That guy was a lunatic, and he ran ATS Wheels and Real, who were a Formula One constructor that year. But I gravitated to Roland Ratzenberger because of his similarity of name with Roland Rat, who of course was a big children's star in the 80s. So I thought, I hope that Roland Ratzenberger guy does well. So when he graduated to Formula One, I thought, oh great. I remember Roland Ratzenberger from British F3 back in the day, and here he is 6 years later. He's made it all the way to the big show.
He was quite late, wasn't he, to Formula One as well? Wasn't he like about 36, 37 when he made it to Formula One?
No, he was. I think he was born. He was born in '62, and he initially lied about his age. He was lying about his age. I think he initially said he was born in '64, but he wasn't that old. He was old for a debutant, but Damon Hill was older. I think Damon Hill was older when he made his debut. But Ratzenberger was a triumph of perseverance, and it was. I mean, anybody who remembers that day. Yeah. I'm not talking about May the 1st. I'm talking about April the 30th.
I remember it.
That was a day which was a sobering afternoon in our lives, where suddenly, if anybody was watching it live, qualifying live on Eurosport as it was back then, it was a case of, like they're giving him heart massage, and you're just thinking, oh my God, like I had gotten used to the idea that no matter how big of an accident, and we'd had Barrichello's accident.
I was going to say, it was Barrichello's accident.
No matter how big of an accident we have, we could have a Martin Donnelly style accident. We can have Gerhard Berger plough into a wall at 200 miles an hour, and the car erupts in a fireball. The driver always gets out. And this was the first time where you're encountered with the idea that no, these guys can die.
Yeah.
And it's happening right in front. Right, it was very, very intrusive camera work by the Italian directors, and it wouldn't happen that way now. As we saw with the Bianchi accident, the cameras were not hovering over the scene. But there was definitely a day that I won't forget. And I've always thought Ratzenberger's the forgotten man of that weekend.
He was always going to be.
And that's part of the reason why I have the Simtek. I have this 1994 Simtek on my kitchen shelf there, just as a reminder. And I've always thought it was one of the best looking Formula One cars
the
of all time.
MTV Purple Simtek.
Yeah, it was amazing. I loved how that car looked. I mean, it was slow as hell. It was overweight. It was, it had steel suspension instead of carbon. It was, it wasn't a very quick car, but it was a great looking car. And I loved I loved when MTV were in the paddock. You switch on MTV Europe and there'd be Formula One features. Can you imagine, like Bernie, it must have happened because Bernie didn't know what an MTV was. He was so out of touch. Like, how else would MTV end up in the paddock at a Formula One race? Broadcasting, like actually taking footage. That's just not a thing. And it happened back then. So it was pretty fab and groovy. And it was also the launching the career of a woman called Davina McCall. I wonder what happened to her.
Yeah.
I was just about to say, didn't Davina McCall used to be their Ted Kravitz?
She did, yeah. I remember that.
Yeah,
too.
Davina was at several races that year. I mean, I speak from a position of authority because obviously I was 14 and obviously I was there. No, I remember watching it on MTV that, yeah, Davina would be, by her own admission, she'd be wearing a very short skirt and trying to get the drivers to speak to her. And good luck to her.
And she did all right out of it, let's be honest. She did okay. But yeah.
It is a springboard to a great career.
Yeah, no, I do remember that weekend very well because I remember watching. I was watching that qualifying session and I watched Ratzenberger have his accident, and I think only about half an hour before that they were showing replays of what happened the day before with Rubens Barrichello. And I don't think we saw the full replay again of Barrichello's accident until I saw the Senna movie. And it was only when I saw the Senna movie, which Paul and I, we were at the cinema. Were you there as well, Dan?
No, I wasn't. No.
We went to the cinema to see the Senna movie, and it was only when I saw it again, and I've got it on Blu-ray. But I mean, when I saw that accident again, I was just like, wow, that it just reminded me so much of how big the impact was. And that was Barrichello's accident, and he walked away, and then Ratzenberger's crash the next day didn't look as bad. Didn't look anywhere near as bad, but he didn't get out of it. He didn't walk away. You saw Barrichello with his bruised lip, and you know Ratzenberger was gone, and then then there was that awful accident at the start of the race. Where was it? Who was it that didn't get off the line? Sean, was it Pedro Lamy?
Yeah, Pedro Lamy.
Didn't get off the line, and and then. Of course, the Senna accident sort of headlined a really morbid weekend of motorsport, which of course is the 24th anniversary of.
Yeah,
So-
it was definitely I've never experienced a weekend like that where I recall the Friday I was at school and I came back from school and I was listening to the local radio and they said, Rubens Barrichello has been ruled out of Sunday's San Marino Grand Prix after suffering a big crash in qualifying today. And I nonchalantly shrugged and thought, oh, well, that's sad. I guess he must have crashed at Tamburello. It's always Tamburello. They always crash there. But again, it was like, what do? It's like, well, yeah, drivers crash, they get injured, but they always get out. The next day, I saw the footage of the incident after the fact, and I don't think this is in the Senna movie, but the marshals turned the car the right way up with him still in it.
Yeah.
So if he'd had any sort of neck injury, they would have paralysed him because they just threw it over and it went bang back down on its wheels hard with him knocked out. They learned a lot from the Marshal's Handbook there. But on a lighter note, if you've ever seen that fantastic photograph, I don't know who took it, whether it was Schlegel-Milch or Sutton, I can't remember, but the great photograph of Barrichello in that accident at the exact moment of impact. Have you ever seen the one I'm talking about?
No, I don't
No,
think
don't
so.
think so.
Look on the internet. I look for Rubens Barrichello in Imola 1994 on the internet. There's a great photograph, still image of Barrichello on the top of the tyre wall, just like a millisecond before it hits the concrete.
Yeah.
And if you look carefully, both his hands are over his visor. He's covering his eyes like, oh, shit, because he knows there's a big impact coming. But it's this amazing photograph where you think, wow, look at that, a Grand Prix driver with both hands over his face because he's like, shit.
Yeah, McLaren shared a photo on Instagram today, I think it was, remembering Ratzenberger. It's a brilliant photo, and it's not one I've ever seen before. I'll see if we can share it on the website as
Yeah, I was
well.
going to say if you can find that, and I'll see if I can find a link to the
It's
the
from
Barrichello one.
Friday practice, I think it is, at Imola, and it's Senna in the Williams Renault with Ratzenberger behind him, actually on circuit.
Wow, absolutely.
And it's not a photo I've ever seen before.
Yeah, I know that. I know the one you're talking about. I'd also advise any listeners to go and read anything that Adam Cooper has written about Roland Ratzenberger down the years, because Adam was friends with Roland and knew him very well, because they were in Japanese. Adam covered Japanese Formula 3000 before F1, and that's where he knew Ratzenberger from. So they were very good friends, and there's some great stories about Ratzenberger. He was a bit of a legend of the era.
Yeah. Yeah, we like Adam Cooper as well, because he provides us with some good information through his Twitter occasionally. So.
He does, yes, definitely. Right, Sean, you've been asking us the questions. I think it's time to turn the tables. Have you got your total shunt ready?
I'm ready.
Right. Who's this one from?
It's from Jeremy Hopewood. I think it's the first one.
That's a shunt
I
debutant.
don't think we've ever heard from Jeremy Hopewood before.
Oh, we've had,
Hello,
I think,
Jeremy.
I think we've had Formula Lee entries. And
Have we?
Tweets. Yeah. No, I'm not allowed to look that up to see if it is, because I'll be accused of looking on the internet and I'll get penalised
Yeah,
again.
you'll get another ban.
Five question ban, wasn't it, or something?
No, you got a full quiz ban.
I got a full quiz ban. I had to do the following week's total shunt.
Oh yeah, I remember now. Yeah.
It's not me this week, is it?
No, it's not you this week.
Somebody giving us the right information.
Oh God, yeah. He's under pressure here. Hope he's giving us the right information. I don't check it.
Good point.
Are we ready?
Yep.
I was born in 1985. Right.
So 30 something,
32, 33.
depending. Yeah.
I have two answers.
Who are your two potentials at the moment, Sean?
He's not, he's not going to tell us, don't you?
No,
Well, I can tell you, but I feel like I'm spoiling it for everybody else. Because if I'm right, it's just like, oh wow, that would have been a really good quiz question, but you ruined it by giving us the answer at the start.
He does have a point. We are going to have to do some thinking between ourselves here.
Two more questions and you have a guess. Let's stick to the rules.
Okay. Okay.
Rules channel the fun. My first race was the Australian Grand Prix.
I think I know who it might be.
Yeah, I know who
might
it
be
is.
looking at. You do you know who it is? I think I know who it is.
Well,
at the moment.
based
I've had
upon the
206
evidence presented,
267 championship points in my time in Formula One.
So it's not who I thought it was then. 267 championship points, or 267 points finishes.
Just reading the questions as I see them.
that's
not-
changed. That's
it's
just
not who I
changed the
thought it was,
equation
Sean.
no end.
It's not who I thought it was then, because we've had, what was that, 2 or 3?
3. I'd like
Three.
to guess.
That's 3 we need to get on this
I was
one.
going Lewis Hamilton.
He's had considerably more points than that.
Yes.
Yeah, I would have said Lewis Hamilton as well.
Does your other answer tally up with that then Sean? Your second, because you said you had a couple.
267 points. Is that what I heard?
I'm struggling with this one.
How old's Hulkenberg?
No, I don't think he's that old.
He's not far off.
I thought he was on.
Did you say 267 points?
267 points, yeah. That's what the clue was.
Yeah.
Dan's just guessed Nico Hulkenberg. I don't know if you
Well,
caught
the
that,
other
Sean.
answer I had was Nico Rosberg. So clearly it wasn't Nico Rosberg because he has more points than that.
Hulkenberg was born when? 87?
Hang on a minute. He would have been born in 87.
So it's not Hulkenberg.
Hulkenberg.
I'd like to hurry you for a guess.
Is this where we say Alan McNish or Scott Speed?
How old's Paul de Resta? Paul de Resta's about the same age, isn't he? 85?
About that age.
He's younger than 85.
No, well, no, born in 1985. Come on, Dan.
Oh, God.
What do you reckon, Sean? Paul de Resta, perhaps?
Dan coming in with the hot takes.
It's feasible. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll go
Go for
for the
that as
rest.
our
Works
first
for me.
guess.
I had a key influence on 2 Formula One drivers' championships.
I know Timo Glock had an influence on 1.
But it wasn't Lewis Hamilton's because he wouldn't have celebrated it.
It also, if it was Timo Glock, he would have, and he was born in 1985, he would have scored points on his debut, age 19. So it wasn't.
No.
It's not him.
I think we might need the next clue.
I was active in F1 for 11 years.
11 years and only scored 267 points. I would say Nico Rosberg, but that's not right. The points thing's not correct.
I think it's a thing rather than a person.
That's not very nice. It's not Nico Rosberg.
What thing do you think it is?
No, I haven't got a clue
All
on
right.
that, but I think
Rosberg did 11 seasons, didn't
I-
he? He did 2006 to the end of 2016. That's 11 seasons.
But he scored more than 267 points.
Yeah.
I think I know who it is.
Right.
You're allowed to guess
Do you want me to
if
say?
you think you know who it is, Sean.
I think we've got another clue before
Gonna-
we have to-
yeah.
Do you want me to
I
give
Not
the
yet,
answer?
not yet.
I've had one race start in the American Le Mans series.
That's probably either clinched it or binned it for you, Sean. Did you get that clue?
I think I did, which was he has one race win in American Le Mans series, which means
No.
it is the driver
No,
that I think I
one
was thinking
race
of.
start in the American Le Mans series. So whether that's I don't.
Still the same guy. It's the guy that I thought it was before you gave me that clue. That pretty much consolidated it.
I need a guess
Yeah,
anyway.
we need to keep guessing because we can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I say we need to keep guessing. There's so many blank looks around here. It's like an episode of Humans when they're all switched off.
How old's Ericsson?
He's not done 11 seasons in Formula One.
Seems to have done a lot.
No, not 11.
It just seems longer.
He's not even been that long around that long if you include Sony Ericsson in it.
Just trying to think who will have been around 11 seasons and is currently 32 or 33. This is, yeah. So it's going to be a sort of mid-table finisher, we're thinking, with the 267 points. But how mid-table? That's the question. I'm filling for time here because we haven't.
I haven't got a clue.
Right, I'll tell you what. We'll bend the rules slightly here. We will say our second guess is whatever Sean's answer is, but he's not going to give us the answer just yet, and we'll carry on with the rest of the clues to see how we do.
Right, okay.
How about that?
I don't think Sean's very happy with that.
I was involved in a Grand Prix with half points.
The Malaysian 2009. That was a half points. That was the last half points Grand Prix. Am I right there, Sean? Was the,
I'm sorry,
the
say that
Malaysian
again?
Grand Prix 2009, was that the last race that half points were given in?
Malaysia 09 was, yeah.
I think next time we speak to Sean, we'll upgrade our gear and use a Ouija board instead of Skype.
Right, next clue.
Bernie Eccleston was instrumental in me getting my start in Formula One, but was also key to my exit.
I thought the clues were meant to get easier as they went on.
Are we looking at a team rather than a person?
I didn't hear that clue at all. Could you say that again?
Bernie Eccleston was instrumental in me getting into Formula One, but was also key to my exit.
I think it's a team.
Or Bridgestone tyres.
yeah.
Oh, yes. Yeah, that is a good
But
step.
they weren't born in 1985.
The latest CEO of Bridgestone.
Oh, I have no idea. Sean knows who it is.
Next question.
Next question.
I am now involved in V8 supercars.
Which the only race that I've watched in the last 12 months was the last Bathurst, which I was streaming from my phone onto my friend's TV because. Yeah, doesn't help.
Can you give us all the clues again? Just give us a quick recap.
You've got one more, so I'll give you the last one, then I'll go through them again.
Yeah.
The Melbourne Grand Prix
Okay.
holds unhappy memories for me.
Oh, right. Okay, so it could be Melbourne. Can't remember the year when it was rained off. Less than 75%. There was a half point
Right.
race
Do
there.
you want me to break down the clues?
Go for it. Go for it.
I was born in 1985. My first race was the Australian Grand Prix. I have had 267 championship points in my time in Formula One. My I was the key influence for 2 drivers' world championships. I've achieved. I was active in F1 for 11 years. I've had race starts in the American Le Mans Series. A race start in the American Le Mans Series. I was involved in a Grand Prix with half points. Bernie Eccleston was instrumental to my start in Formula One, but was also key to my exit. I'm now involved in V8 supercars.
Can I just say, gentlemen, that the person that I thought it was, it's not. Because the person I was thinking of was Nick Heidfeld, who was 11 years in Formula One, has raced in the American Le Mans Series, but was not born in 1985. He was born in 1977, I believe. So it can't be the person that I'm thinking of.
And I'll give you another hint, is that I think this is marginally unfair as it's almost a trick quiz.
Right.
Ha!
I think in this situation, the way they're worded, context might not be king.
Are you wet weather?
No.
Are you the Adelaide Grand Prix?
I am.
That was nasty.
That was. Did you get that, Sean?
I didn't get it. I would say that it's kind of misleading. I mean,
Very.
if you'd have said it made its debut, if you'd said it was not, well, I tell you what would have got it. You said it was
Well,
born in 1985. which implies the person.
It's golf.
And
I play it where it sits.
I mean, and it scored 267 points. No, it awarded 267 points. It didn't score them.
I'm with Sean on that one. However, it was very carefully worded.
It was worded pretty well. I mean, don't forget with this. We once I remember the answer was Bibendum, the Michelin Man.
Yeah.
And that was still born at some point. It was the I'm big in the catering industry where we all said Roman Grosjean.
But
I suppose you could, like.
hey, by the way, I'll give you. Can I be a taker?
Why not?
Bonus, Sean.
Bonus points to anybody here who can name the car manufacturer that sponsored the first Adelaide Formula One race that
I'm gonna
wasn't
be real-
actually and has never been an engine supplier in Formula One.
They were an engine supplier as well. Ooh. So not Holden then.
Ford?
Ford have never been an engine supplier in Grand Prix. Where have you been?
Sorry, we didn't hear you then. You were cutting out. So they've never been an engine supplier, did
right.
you say?
Yes, they've never. This is a company that have never entered Formula One, but yet they sponsored a Formula One race.
So Holden would make sense.
Yeah. Holden Opel?
Same company.
Same company?
In
Yeah, but.
No,
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so all the GM, Chrysler, as was.
But you can get either of them, though, can't you?
there's a lot of Japanese
No,
cars
none
in
of them.
Australia as well. So someone like Nissan,
Mazda.
you know what? You're close. You're very close. You're close. It is Japanese.
Toyota?
No,
It's a Japanese car company that has won. It's a Japanese car company that has won the World Rally
With Nissan,
Championship.
could it be Datsun?
Could have been an 85. Datsun, Mazda, Nissan, Lexus.
This car company has won the World Rally Championship.
Subaru, Mitsubishi.
No.
You're into Korea now.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, Mitsubishi.
Well done.
Chris, you are an honorary total shunt.
The Mitsubishi Motors Australian Grand Prix, ladies and gentlemen.
You know what's really weird is that Derek Warwick now runs a Mitsubishi dealership in Jersey.
Does he?
Yeah,
That's strange.
I think it's Mitsubishi. I have to check that. I'm pretty sure it's Mitsubishi.
Check up on your facts. Sean, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We have had a couple of
Oh
technical
no, wait!
difficulties.
Nigel Mansell runs a Mitsubishi
I was
dealership.
going to say you've been to that.
Yes, I have.
As I was saying, Sean, thank you very much for joining us. We've had a couple of technical difficulties tonight, but I'm hoping it'll come out in the edit. So please, nobody tweet me at all tomorrow. I'm just going to be sat plugged into a computer all day. We will.
I don't envy you for 1 second for the forthcoming edit of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm gonna have my work cut out tomorrow, but it'll be interesting. I'll just have to train the cats to keep bringing me cups of coffee every 10 minutes.
Yeah, there's going to be a YouTube video somewhere along the lines as well, isn't there? There's always a YouTube video when you try to do stuff.
It'll be a YouTube video of me swearing. I'm not editing this one in 360. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. I know it was short notice, but after a race like that, we needed all the professional help we could get.
Absolutely.
And no doubt we will see you on the show sometime soon.
All right, pleasure as always. I'll talk to you probably in a few weeks again.
That's great.
Yep.
Thanks very much,
Thanks a
Sean.
lot, Sean.
See you soon.
Thanks,
mate.
Sean.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So yeah, always a pleasure to have Sean on the show.
Absolutely, every time. Can't thank him enough for coming on.
No, absolutely. So just a little bit of news. We sort of already glazed over the sort of Red Bull Honda thing with Sean, but the other news item we got written down, the passive aggressive nature of Lewis Hamilton post race. Is he already starting to try and play psychological mind games already?
Well, it's a day late and a dollar short if he's firing them at Rosberg.
No, he's not. That's the thing. Who is
Well,
he?
yes,
firing?
he is.
Yeah, he is.
Well, yeah,
That's what he meant by finger.
Yes.
Was the whizzy finger.
Yeah.
Not the straight finger.
yeah, a little bit.
Not the Seb Mr. Pointy.
No.
Although, to be honest, the Mr. Pointy award now goes to Roman Grosjean for his official Formula One photo when they're doing the grid rundown.
I think you'll find that the nervous breakdown of the weekend award goes to Roman Grosjean.
It was Ericsson. It wasn't Ericsson.
No, did you not see him giving it the boohoos in qualifying when he went out?
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. He also threw his gloves at an engineer.
I don't think he was aiming for the engineer. I
No,
think
but it nearly hit him.
Yeah,
though.
I think I don't think he was expecting the engineer to be there.
Yeah.
Quali launched his helmet across the track. Well, not the track, but across the road in the lay-by bit.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the Hamilton made some quite odd comments post race, saying at first he didn't want to celebrate too much, which we've already said, about inheriting a win. Didn't want to have. What was his actual words, Lee? Can you remember what?
I can't remember
he
whether
said?
we're properly now. I'll just have to paraphrase it because my brain's tired. We basically said he wasn't celebrating on the podium because he doesn't like to inherit wins. He said certain drivers on the track don't mind that, and certain drivers which you've just left, but it's not my priority. Prerogative. We'll go with that. To inherit a win and start waving my finger around.
Yes.
Still no love lost between the pair of them.
Nope.
Then.
No, absolutely not.
Well, Rosberg hasn't just left, so he must have been talking about Massa.
Now we know they've got previous "Don't touch me, man."
Yeah. No. Yeah, I think he's trying to play psychological mind games already.
I think Rosberg's got the psychological advantage here.
Well, by not racing.
Yeah, I've got a world title. I'm done.
Yeah.
Rosberg is in this situation as like the chill gay guy, which is just like, oh, just give it a rest.
Leave me to my light coloured sandy suit.
You notice it's the same colour as Bottas's regular trousers every time you see a video bit. There is something about Finn's wearing beige.
Oh no, I didn't.
Yeah, and like there's a thing about ex-Formula One drivers like in a crushed linen pant as well, I've noticed.
Yeah, I have noticed that. Yeah.
And white jeans.
Yeah,
Like
or-
unbelievably tight white jeans.
Or if you're of a certain age, box fresh whites with white socks and crushed linen pants.
Yeah.
Emerson Fittipaldi.
I remember when that look was terrible in the 1980s.
Yeah, still is.
You remember when it was terrible in the 1900s.
I think you will find there were pantaloons then. Breeches. Right, shameless self-promotion time.
Yes. Paul's got some good details.
My name's Lee.
You've got a whole podcast to shamelessly self-promote. Give the rest of us a chance.
Which is called Must See Audio, and you can download it now.
We were
No,
talking
don't
on last...
download it now. Listen to this now.
You
No,
can
no.
download it as soon as you finish. Well,
We've already got the hit. It's fine.
yeah, there was a bizarre Twitter conversation about your podcast last night. And are you going to use that name for your next show?
I don't know. It depends what we're talking about.
What was it?
Was this the Marion Luigi
Yeah,
conversation?
pseudo-lesbian Nintendo incest or something.
Yeah, I mean, we'd have to accidentally talk about that, though. I can't see it being a subject.
Yeah, I'm just planting the seed. No, the shameless self-promotion. We were talking about this last week. The official daily Formula One fantasy game has launched, and you can now sign up. And you can now sign up courtesy of our site
With some benefits.
with some benefits.
Why?
Yeah.
Sites with benefits.
Not the ones you usually go on.
Damn it.
Now, if you go to threelegs4wheels.com and look in the gaming section, you'll see a link there for Daily Fantasy. And for Daily Fantasy Formula One games. Stop it! I'm being serious here.
Have we accidentally bled into Must See Audio?
I don't know, but if he gets another bottle of wine out, I am joining him with this one. Completely derailed me train of thought.
No, if you click on the link, you'll see a link for...
On Daily Fantasy Formula One.
Yes.
And if you register through that link and deposit $20 into your account, this is for listeners in the UK, Ireland, and Australia only, unfortunately, because
At the moment.
because they are the only three countries that they are accepting money bets and money games from.
Regulations,
Yes,
etc.
regulations, laws, gambling, etc. Gamble responsibly. You will get a $22 bonus, so you can actually double up what you bet, and it's a combination of betting and traditional fantasy sports. It looks cool. There's going to be some free games on there as well. They've got some games that are free to enter for anyone in the world with prizes. And we're going to start a couple of Three Legs, Four Wheels games on there to see if you can beat our predictions as well.
Yeah.
So
You really should be able to beat our predictions.
Well, talking about predictions, how did we do this week?
badly.
Yeah,
Quite bad.
I had a Haas on the podium in my predictions.
I think we both had Hamilton to win, though, didn't we?
Yeah.
Thought so.
Yeah. I am just...
Did anybody put any money on the race?
I put £10 on Bottas to win just before he put the hypers on, and the Red Bulls fucking kamikazed into each other. I was on that restart, especially when he spranted through it and put the gap in. Spranted, yeah. I was feeling pretty good about
And
my
the next
my
lap,
life.
you felt really bad.
Well, I did, but I still felt semi good because I still had a fiver on Hamilton to win at 10-1 as well. But he had to get a fastest lap for that bet to work.
I had
He lost it by a tenth.
a £5 bet on Kimi Raikkonen to win the race.
Instead of betting on Kimi, just give me your money.
No, but I went each way, so I got some money back.
Oh, that's good.
So, the predictions. Last week, Chris, you said a Kimi Raikkonen win,
I was wrong.
Lewis Hamilton second,
I got those two the other way around.
and Valtteri Bottas third.
That gives me 2 points.
That gets you 2 points. Dan, a Lewis Hamilton win,
Which happened.
Sebastian Vettel in second,
Did not happen.
and a Kevin Magnussen third.
Really
not
did not happen.
Anything but that happened. Lee, Lewis Hamilton win,
That did happen.
Sebastian Vettel second,
Did not happen.
and Bottas third.
Did
that?
not happen.
Did not happen.
No, he didn't finish.
No, he didn't. He is.
He is
finished.
finished.
It was classified.
True.
Classified a fucking bell in. That would have been 110 quid.
Bitterness will get you nowhere. Sean, a Vettel win,
No.
Bottas second,
No.
Ricciardo third,
No.
Nope.
and me, a Vettel win,
No.
Nope.
Ricciardo second,
No.
Nope.
Bottas third.
No.
Dan, that puts you in the lead on the prediction league.
Yes.
Where am
How?
I? Am I still last?
No. Dan's winning with 15 points because it's 3 points for right driver in the right position.
Yeah.
1 point for driver in the top three out of the position you predicted.
Yeah.
I'm in second, even though I scored no points this week. I'm in second with 13. We have a two-way tie for third.
Between
Chris
us two.
and Lee.
Dun, dun, dun.
And
We're
that
the
means
worst in the room.
Our team sports journalist professional.
Has 4 points and is in fifth place.
Enjoy those articles. Enjoy those well-informed articles.
She's too busy writing those to make proper predictions.
We'll need to step up our prediction game, Lee, for the Spanish Grand Prix on
Well,
next week's podcast.
Well, I'm just happy Paul scored no points because that means at least we clawed something back, or I
a
clawed
little
something
bit.
back.
Yeah, I did too. I got
Dan
2
clawed more than
points,
enough
yeah.
back. He's now beating me by 2 points.
So,
So we're gonna be running some prediction games that you can all join in on Play On, starting with Spain. So we'll get that sorted out. You'll be able to find the usual link on our Facebook page, which is facebook.com/3legs4wheels. Stop showing me pictures of Mario and Luigi. You
that's
know
the
exactly.
people of Mario and Luigi I was thinking of.
You'll be able to find those on facebook.com/3legs4wheels, and we'll link it on Twitter as well.
Where's their fantasy link?
There isn't one.
Anybody who wants to know what we're talking about, just look up the Twitter feed from last night, Sunday night.
There's
That
a
was it.
thread somewhere.
There's a thread. I don't,
Which is twitter.com/3legs4wheels.
it is. And you can also get hold of us individually on Twitter by getting us at
At Flood21.
At Dan Dangleton.
At a total shunt.
and at Pablo100.
I'm going like my Twitter because I'm only 2 away. I'm only 12 away now from 400.
So you need followers.
Yeah.
We need followers as well. We're 34 away from 1,000.
Yeah, it's grand. That's grand.
Come and follow us on Twitter. You know,
We're more important than you.
We're all important as a whole.
You're a hole. Well, somebody had to do that.
We're the fucking pillars that hold this shit together.
Anyway.
Anyway. Right, Formula Lee. Yes.
No.
No, you didn't.
No, I didn't.
This was Baku in the wet in a Williams. And this
kind of why I didn't.
Lapse in.
This
I
was-
think you're ahead of me, aren't you?
No, I didn't even do it.
Oh, you know, I know you used to ahead of me.
Lee, most of the world's ahead of you. Dan, you actually got in the points this week.
Good man.
I am our very own Lance Stroll.
You finished 15th overall
Yes, Dan. Well
with
done.
your time of 155.663. I was a little bit behind 157.731, finishing 30th. And, God, I'm having to scroll a long way here. Oh,
No.
I'm having to scroll all the way down to 46th place out of 51. Lee,
It's Far Cry 5.
yeah, 2 minutes, 2 minutes.752.
Yeah, I got a couple of sighters in, and
That was all you did.
yeah.
But the ones that did make it into the points, starting off, you had to get over 156.276 to score. So we have Ayrton Antonucci, Sean Gernon, Adam Smith. Be pleased I'm going to say this next one. Ed Forsyth, you've got points.
Yes.
Well done,
Well
Ed.
done,
Well
Ed.
done, Ed Staban. Lee Webster. Then we get Dan, Patrick Daly, Vitya Camping, Dominic Arietta, Travis Parker, Ollie Vestley, Alberto Roldan, Max Williams, Freddie Brunner, Nicholas Carline, Zach Henderson, and Pete Bull. Now the top three.
Good efforts for all of those. Some very familiar names in there. So thank you very much for continuing your support.
And the top three are going to sound familiar as well. In third place with a time of 154.762 is Karl Jarazec. In second place with a time of 154.287, who was leading up until this afternoon, Bradley Chambers.
Oh, Bradley.
And then a last-minute Senna-esque Will Coatsian lap from Will Coates, taking the win this week with 153.317.
Good effort, Will.
Excellent.
Where's Jeff
one.
gone? How the mighty have fallen.
Project Cars 2, I think. Sharpie, get playing again.
Yeah.
Right, Lee. Spain.
Spain.
Yeah.
It's,
It's
a dry,
banned,
it's a
yeah.
dry race this week, isn't it? Given current form.
Yes. No, given current form, it could be upside down during a plague of frogs.
No. It's been wet, dry.
I'm pretty sure you had 2 wet races in a row, didn't you?
Did I?
Yeah.
During
Go on.
during the winter, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. But since the beginning of the
Oh,
season.
possibly. I don't know.
What car should we have?
What haven't we had this year?
We haven't had Ferrari.
We haven't had a Ferrari.
Let's have a Ferrari.
Right, so that is a Ferrari in the dry in Spain. You have got until 7 o'clock UK time on the 14th of May. God, is it May already? Where's this year gone?
Oh yeah.
7 o'clock UK time on the 14th of May to get your time to us. You can drop us a private message on Facebook, you can send a direct message on Twitter, and you can email us 3legs4wheels@gmail.com with those. Just one more thing we want to get in is the extra show that we do every week for our wonderful patrons who subscribe on Patreon. If you go to patreon.com/3legs4wheels, you can sign up to donate an amount every month from $1 upwards.
The more you give, the more we love.
Oh, I like that. I like that. And that gets you an extra show, and we're still working on what the extra freebies are going to be. And we've got a few new patrons to give a shout out to since last week.
So thank you very much, guys. It all helps, keeps this show running.
It does, because we need to buy some new software because I think we've crashed a few times tonight.
Yeah.
Just a few.
But we want to say thanks to our new patrons this week, which are sizable list this week: Carl, Jeffrey, Ray, Taylor, Matt, Jamie, Casey. Want to thank Gino for increasing his pledge. John, Rob, Andrew, Amy, and Alberto.
Thank you very much,
So
everyone.
thank you to all of you. We seriously couldn't do this without you. And don't forget, if we do reach the target of 250 patrons by the time Le Mans rolls around, we will do another live blog. And at the moment, which is 11:15 on a Monday night, we're on 144. So just 106 more of you
Yep.
means that we will stay awake for 24 hours and waffle about Le Mans.
Who upped their pledge?
Who up their pledge? That would have been Gino.
That's the type of dedication I like. The man that's gone away, thought about it for a second and thought, I'm not giving them motherfuckers enough money. And he's gone back on and upped it. You get 6 Lee points.
Very good.
Spend them wisely.
If you collect 100, you get a tour of Lee's dungeon.
If you get 200, you get to leave.
Lee points are hard to come across in the dungeon.
Choose wisely.
Make sure you get the 200 points before you go in.
You have chosen poorly.
Speaking of dungeons, I realised something the other day.
You were playing World of Warcraft. Please tell me you were playing World
No,
of
no,
Warcraft.
no. I'm not that stupid. Do you remember Nightmare?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Does anybody else get it where if they've got a bag like over their shoulder or something like that, and they have to put something in, they instantly think of Nightmare?
No,
No.
I often think if I don't wear a satchel style
Yeah.
over the shoulder man bag thing, but on a rare occasion that I do, I often think of the Titanic game that I used to play on the PC because I make the old paper noise where you put your papers in your bag,
Yeah.
which is a noise that the bag used to make when you opened it and closed it.
It's the same as I can't climb up a step ladder without thinking I'm in a ladder match.
Oh dear God! Right,
But I climb up step ladders like every 15 fucking minutes at work.
Same here.
So if you want to subscribe to Patreon, there's more stuff like that on that show that isn't Formula One related at all, and I think we better go talk about that now. 'Cause we've
think we
not
probably
done
should
this
do.
with Patreon tonight. So thank you for joining us. Thanks once again to Sean for sticking with us.
Thank you, Sean.
And putting up with all the technical difficulties here and on his side of things.
Yep.
I'm sure I'll do a good job in the edit tomorrow.
Much appreciated.
Or by the time you listen to this, I'm sure I did a passable job in the edit.
Why don't you tweet Paul and rate his editing from a score from 1 to 10?
With 10 being Carlos Sainz. No.
That was the beginning of the thread.
That's where it all went downhill. We'll see you next week when we'll be previewing the Spanish Grand Prix, and God knows what's going to happen in the interim. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.